My dad told me that his new girlfriend of like 4 months has full permission to boss me around and tell me what to do, causing me to essentially pull away from my dad entirely and just about go no contact altogether. Because now that he's reached back out to me, I'm still very pissed off about this, as I feel this new stepmother in my life is just a toxic person and I just want nothing to do with her. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk and hit the bell to turn on notifications. Okay, so my dad met his girlfriend back when I was like 16 years old, and then about 4 months later, he introduced her to me when I was 17. Now, the third or fourth time that I met her, I was literally on the verge of like meeting up with friends, and that's when she said to me that I couldn't go. She said she was having her parents over to mine and my dad's house for dinner so we could all meet them. I then told her that she didn't get to tell me what to do, and she told me that dad gave her permission and that she was an adult and I was a kid, so I did need to listen to her. Well, I chose to leave anyways, and my dad said nothing to me, but his girlfriend did when I saw her again. Then a few weeks after that, she was having a dinner party with dad and some of her friends and asked dad if she could use his kitchen. He said of course, and I was on my way to work and my dad wasn't home, and it's here that again she told me I needed to help her make dinner. I then told her that I was going to work, and it's here that this lady literally said to me, well, your dad told me your work schedule and he didn't say you're working today. But I told her, well, I was called in to cover for someone. She then literally tried again by saying, well, you need to start getting permission for this stuff. And I told her, well, I didn't need to explain anything to her, and then at that point I just left. After that, my dad and her told me that she was an adult and she had permission to parent me when needed. And I ended up arguing with my dad about it on and off for months. She at other times tried to set her own rules for me, and I just straight up ignored them, and I told my dad that it pissed me off that he'd let her do this. But he told me that he was serious about her and that she was going to be my stepmom one day. But I told him if they really thought I was going to like her and listen to her like she's been around since I was young, then they could absolutely think again. She then told me that she believed in communicating everything and teenagers having strict rules, but I told her that she could believe what she wanted and that I really didn't give a crap. Well, needless to say, she was moving in as I was moving out, thankfully. I couch surfed for a while before finding a place with some friends, and I basically pulled away from my dad for a couple of months, and then I just went straight up no contact. I even ignored their wedding invite and didn't go to their wedding at all. My dad reached out 3 or 4 times immediately afterwards, and I just straight up ignored him. And then he asked my aunt to help get us into the same house, which she did, and it's here that he told me that when we're at her house, that he wants us to work on our relationship, and he even suggested therapy. Well, that's a whole year after no contact and almost a year and a half since I pulled away from him. But I told him that he knows what the problem is, and he needs to understand that before anything can even begin to happen. He said that I need to look at this from a different perspective, and my aunt wants me to give therapy with him a chance because I'm so young, and I don't have a whole lot of family to rely on in these tough times. So I really don't know what to do here. I'm honestly so frustrated by this, and I'm seriously struggling to find any kind of common ground in this situation because this is really annoying. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Oh my gosh, if my dad looked at me and said, my new girlfriend of 4 months gets to boss you around. Congratulations, she's your new mom, basically. It's like, dude, what are we talking about? That's absolutely not gonna happen. What a weird way to introduce this lady into my life. A person I literally don't know that you're now essentially shoving down my throat and saying, you need to like her. She's gonna be your stepmother one day. She makes the rules now. Like, man, that is a terrible first impression, and I seriously don't blame you for going no contact. So yeah, if I was in your shoes, I would not even begin to try therapy unless my dad admitted that he was wrong, that the way she acted was completely toxic and she shouldn't have treated me that way when I was a teenager. And only if that happens will I ever begin to have some kind of like mending of this relationship. Otherwise, it's just not gonna work and it would still piss me off. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk if you haven't already, and also check out Am I the Genius. They're like the cool older brother that sees you walking home from school and they drive up and they're like, get in, we're going home. Like seriously, check them out. You're gonna absolutely love them. We love them, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy them as well. Also, if you want to submit your own stories, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit, and please share your stories with the world. We would love to hear what you have to say. And also, big shout out to Link Plays. Like, I really love the fact that you're loving the videos, and just as much as you love the Karen voices that I try to do, I love doing them. Sometimes I have to like cut out the laughter of me just like giggling like an idiot because sometimes it's hard to get through some of these stories. There are some ridiculous circumstances and it's like, man, I gotta get this Karen voice right. So yeah, man, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. And with that, let's get back to the video and on to the next story. Am I the jerk for refusing to be like policed and managed by another company's employee? Because right now I'm put in a position where I'm doing work outside of my contract, which really has left a bad taste in my mouth because right now I don't know what to do. Here's what's happening. Okay, so I'm a 30-year-old female and I work part-time in administration for a large company based in a building shared by 3 separate organizations. When I first started, my role was admin. The building has one shared reception area, and although reception wasn't my main job, I would on a daily basis be at the front desk. My manager made it clear though that if I needed to, then I could work in the office or at one of our different offices if I wanted to. Now, one employee from one of the other organizations, we'll call her Linda for the sake of the story, seemed to think that it was my responsibility to stay on the desk whenever I was in the office. If I wasn't sitting there, she would complain, and even said she was going to report me every time I wasn't on reception. And yeah, that's right, she would report to her manager, despite the fact that we work for completely different organizations, and she has absolutely no authority over me. But I told her, okay, go ahead. I mean, I'm just doing my job. Well, after I raised this whole reporting me comment to another member of her team, she actually ended up shouting and swearing at me in front of other people, staff, and clients, which to my embarrassment resulted in me crying. Now, while she did apologize to me, a member of her own team later told her that she had heard the way that she was speaking to me on occasion, and that her tone was unpleasant and that other people had noticed it too. Well, a few months later, my job was completely restructured after redundancies and a new contract, and thankfully I still have a job. However, instead of supporting one office, the admin team was reduced to just 2 admins covering 5 different areas. And this new role involved much more complex work. My new contract doesn't even specify a base because we're hybrid workers, and we can work from anywhere, and bases were not included in our contracts. I specifically agreed to the increased workload because I was told it would be manageable, as I wouldn't be covering reception anymore. Plus, the other administrator is already working from home most of the time. Now, during the changeover, it became part of the negotiations that the specific area I've always worked in is something that I would actually be keeping in our office for now. So, due to this, I was told in regards to my job that nothing will change for 2 weeks while everything just settled down. And that was at the start of June. It's now mid-July and I'm still there, which honestly I don't mind. I like the office and staff, but it's just the reception area that is the issue for me. Well, last week I was the only admin working. I spent 1 full day covering reception and another day and a half in the office. On the reception day, I didn't stop for lunch. I even worked late and I still just couldn't keep up with my admin work. Now, the reason I struggled isn't because my own organization has lots of visitors. Instead, it's because I'm sat at the shared reception desk at the front of the building, meaning that I'm expected to greet every single visitor who comes through the door, even though most of them are there for the other 2 organizations. Every interruption means stopping what I'm doing, greeting them, finding out who they're there to see, and then directing them. It's those constant interruptions for other companies that stop me from getting through my workload. Now, my manager knows this and has previously told me that if I can't cover the desk because of my admin work, then I simply shouldn't do it. But the frustrating part is that for my organization, covering reception is usually just pointing visitors towards a door where our office is. The other organizations don't mind doing that when I'm not there. And in fact, whenever I'm not in the office, as I'm part-time, nobody officially covers reception for us, and everyone copes perfectly well. Now, ironically, when Linda is off, me and the third organization do far more than point people in the right direction for her. We greet her visitors, we take their names, we find out who they're seeing, we call around trying to locate staff members for appointments, and generally cover her role because she's hard of hearing and she sits further back. So we're expected to do much more for her than she's willing to do for us. Well, last week, Linda had another go at me because 2 of our visitors came in while I wasn't sitting on reception, and she literally said to me that she didn't have time to point people towards our office. It doesn't seem to matter how many times I explain that reception is no longer part of my role. She just repeats herself and says, "Oh, it's your job to be at the desk." She actually phoned me later that day to apologize, saying that she didn't mind pointing at the door and didn't know why she said anything. But this week, the attitude has continued. There's this lingering atmosphere and it's so unpleasant. She has told everyone that she's sick of being alone and is going to be putting in a complaint. Well, after that, I told my manager, look, I don't want to cover reception anymore. My role changed, my contract doesn't mention reception, and I accepted the increased workload because I was told I wouldn't be doing it anymore. And the only admin still being expected to stay in the office and cover reception is me, while the other admin literally just works remotely. My manager's response was that reception cover is needed, and that the people who wrote the contracts had no idea what would actually be required. At the same time, my manager has now emailed Linda's manager just to raise concerns about her behavior towards me, because this has become an ongoing issue rather than like a one-off disagreement. Now, another reason why I feel like I've reached this point is that I feel like by continuing to cover reception, even though it isn't a part of my new role, it's gradually become an expectation rather than me just helping out. What started off as me trying to be flexible now suddenly seems to be viewed as my responsibility by everybody. Instead of it being appreciated as extra help, I'm now getting criticized whenever I'm not there. It really feels like I've unintentionally set a precedent that I'm the receptionist, despite that never being what I agreed to when my role changed. At this moment, I don't want to work on reception any longer. Not just because it stops me from doing the job I was actually employed to do, but because this isn't the first time I've been given grief by someone from another organization over a role that isn't in my contract. Every time I'm sat on that desk, I feel like I'm waiting for the next confrontation. So am I the jerk for refusing to be policed by another company's employee? Because I honestly don't know what else to do. Okay, dude, if my new contract said that I don't have to work reception, then congratulations, I'm not working at that desk ever again. I would put it in writing and I would forward all of that to human resources. Your manager's clearly not doing anything and they're like, well, I'm sorry, but we need someone at reception. And it's like, dude, cool, okay, I totally understand. Then you need to hire someone to do that. I'm not doing both these jobs because you literally signed up for more work. And it's like, okay, I can't complete this more work if I'm being interrupted by people all day for a job I didn't sign up for and one that I'm not getting paid for. Not to mention Linda. Like, dude, I hate Linda. There's always a Linda at some organization who acts like this, and I can't stand these people. They'll be the first one to say, you're not doing your job right. And then they themselves can't even do the job right at all. And if you call them out, oh, suddenly it's a problem. Like, holy crap, dude, get a life. Why are you bothering me? Like, what's worse is that we're not even coworkers, dude. I literally don't know you and I don't work for you. So why are you trying to act like my manager, dude? So no, I wouldn't put up with this. I would absolutely report this above my manager because they're doing nothing to fix this. And considering the fact that you've got a higher workload, this really seems unfair and it's just not something I would ever want to put up with. Am I the jerk for putting my brother in his place after he tried to blame his wife for getting pregnant, even though he's also responsible for this child coming into the world? Because right now he's pissed off at me and honestly, I don't really know what to do from here. Okay, so my older brother, who I will call Cameron, has been married to his high school sweetheart, who I will call Alice, ever since they were 19 years old. Alice grew up in a very conservative Christian household where she was one of 11 children, and her mother stayed at home while her father worked to provide for the family. Alice has also always wanted to follow in her mother's footsteps and be a stay-at-home parent with a large brood of kids. When my brother Cameron and Alice first announced their engagement, everyone in my family told Cameron that if he really wanted that type of lifestyle with Alice, then he would need to work really, really hard, especially in a tough economy. Cameron was not really concerned and said that he had a plan, and to this day I have no idea what his plan was. Well, fast forward to now and Alice and Cameron have 5 kids with a 6th one on the way, but they're struggling a lot financially. He's borrowed money multiple times from my parents, and my parents give in every single time because they feel guilty about their grandkids going without. Well, Cameron called me last night to vent about it, saying how he was sick of her and how he was tired of working his butt off. He confessed to me that he is secretly really upset by the news of this 6th child because he was trying to convince Alice to get a job, but now she's pregnant again, so there's no way he will be able to convince her. And honestly, this is where I might be the jerk. I told him that I understand his frustrations and his wife was partly to blame, but he knew what Alice wanted when they got married, and it's not as though he did anything to prevent the 6th child from being conceived. He asked me what I meant by that, and I said, well, it takes 2 to tango, buddy, and it's here that he cussed me out and then hung up. So I'm not really sure if I'm the jerk here, but I was only trying to convey that he has some agency in his marriage, and he can't blame the crappy situation entirely on his wife. So am I the jerk because I don't really know what to make of this situation anymore? No, you're not the jerk. Cameron's an idiot. Holy crap, dude, you got into this thinking, oh yeah, it's fine. I'll just work really hard and things will work out. It's totally okay. But it's like, dude, if you really didn't want this lifestyle, you should have known that ahead of time. Because Alice is like one of 11 children. She clearly wants this and she's like, oh, I wanted all these kids all the time. And first of all, that's incredibly irresponsible and so mean to the kids because like, dude, these kids are most likely going to be like rejected and completely neglected. And one of the older siblings is going to turn into the parent, which is something we've seen before on this channel, and it is a nightmare. But it's so funny that Cameron's trying to be like, man, I'm so sick of Alice. I can't believe she wants to have another kid. And it's like, dude, unless she's cheating on you, this is also your fault. So no, you're not the jerk. Your brother's being an idiot. It does take 2 to tango in this situation. This literally is the life he wanted and agreed to, and if he doesn't like it, well, too bad. It's kind of too late for that. Am I the jerk for refusing to drive my sister home and forcing her to take public transportation instead? Because seriously, I need the car way more than she does, and driving her to and from her boyfriend's house all the time is exhausting. And at this point, I don't know if I'm in the wrong or not. Here's what's happening. Okay, so for a bit of background, my sister bought a car about 6 years ago. My mother co-signed the payment on the car and has been paying it off since my sister has no longer got a job or any source of income. And all of that is to say that she basically technically doesn't own the car. Well, this summer I got a job and I needed to share the car for work. And currently the car is paid off with my sister owing a lot of money to my mom, and I'm currently paying for the gas. My sister goes to her boyfriend's house for days at a time, and then she will ask me to drive her to and from his house, which is, by the way, around a 2-hour drive round trip. Spending the extra time to do this takes a toll on me when I'm working so much. I literally don't have any days off. I've asked her to instead take public transportation so that I don't have to drive her, and that I'm completely willing to drop her off at the train station, but she has rejected this idea multiple times. Well, finally today I had enough, and I just straight up told her that I'm not driving her home, and if she wants to get back home, then she can take public transportation, to which she replied that she will be taking the car next time she comes home. But I just very bluntly told her that no, she's definitely not taking the car, and that my needs for it are far greater than hers, seeing as she has no responsibilities that require her to be at places at punctual times, like work or school. She then quite literally told me that she does not care if I think my reasons for getting places are as important as hers, and that she'll take matters into her own hands, literally by taking the car and forcing me to either walk or take public transportation to work. But finally, I just reiterated that my needs are more important than hers right now, and asking her to just take the sacrifice of taking public transportation every weekend, when she wants to see her boyfriend, instead of forcing me to make that same sacrifice every day, sometimes multiple times a day, is not a big ask. I also offered to work out a system where, for example, I drove her there and she took the transit back, but she has yet to respond to this proposition, and honestly, I don't think she'll ever agree to it. And in my opinion, she just doesn't want to take the public transportation for some superstitious reason. In my opinion, my reasons for needing the car far outweigh hers, and I don't want this to escalate any further, but it seems like she's determined to not take public transit and is willing to take the car from me despite how great my needs are. But regardless, I'm standing firm on not driving her this time, since she has public transportation at her disposal and she's just ignorant to using it. So am I the jerk here because I don't know what to do? Okay, first off, I'm a little confused about who actually owns the car, because it really doesn't sound like your sister owns any of this car. It seems like your mom's paid for everything, and she's the one who probably has a final say in who can drive it or not drive it. But even just getting those semantics out of the way, seriously, I think you deserve that car way more than your sister. She sounds lazy, she's not doing anything with her life, and she's just refusing to take public transportation for some dumb reason. Because her rationale is to say, okay, well, I'm just gonna take the car from you next time, and it's okay, that didn't answer my question at all. Why are you not willing to take the train or the bus? It's there, it's available for people to use, and in some places it's probably free on the weekends, so what's the problem here? So no, you're not the jerk for keeping the car. I think you deserve it, and your sister's being stupid, and the fact that she doesn't want to work with you in any kind of way is super toxic. Am I overreacting for being afraid of my neighbor? Because she's really laying it on thick incredibly fast, and at this point I'm trying to find ways to get her evicted because I just don't want to deal with her. Here's what's currently going on. Okay, so basically I'm a 20-year-old female and I live alone in an apartment. My mom dropped me off the other day and I realized that I'd left my phone in her car. I don't have any other way to communicate with people at the moment, so I really need it. Also, on top of that, my apartment is still getting set up as it's not at all ready. So I remembered my landlord telling me that this old lady is moving in next door to me, and she was a teacher, and I thought, okay, screw it. I need to call my mom, and my building doesn't have a front desk. So I knocked on her door and she answered, and I asked her, hey, could I use your phone to call my mom? And I told her basically the situation. This lady then said yes and invited me in. She's about 56 years old, she lives alone, and she basically trapped me there for an hour and a half because my mom didn't pick up, and then she started spewing out these awful things about people who weren't white, and she was really just making some terrible remarks, and I was genuinely stunned and incredibly uncomfortable. And I was so uncomfortable that I didn't even say anything. I just kind of disassociated a little bit. And in hindsight, sure, I really should have just left and said, hey, that's really messed up. But I don't know, I just kind of froze. And anytime I tried to leave, she kept blocking the door and talking to me. In fact, she even went as far as calling herself a bonus mom to me and said she's so glad that she met me. And my God, I was so uncomfortable and I wanted to leave so badly. Anyways, fast forward and I've put my shoes on and I'm trying to go. And at this point, she's literally in front of the door and I'm saying saying to her, hey, I really need to go now. Then my mom finally calls her back and I tell her, hey, I left my phone in your car. And my mom acknowledges this and says she'll bring it by. I then go get it and thankfully this lady let me go. And then I quickly go home and I lock my door. But guess what? This wasn't the end of it because my creepy neighbor knocked 4 times on my door like throughout an hour. And I just completely ignored it like I was not going to deal with that. Well, today rolls around and she knocks in the morning. And when I answer the door, she's like, oh, good morning. How are you? And I'm just standing there like, well, I'm actually getting ready for work. I can't really talk right now. Sorry. But the entire time she keeps really trying to talk to me and I'm like, I'm sorry, I really need to go. Then after work today, I get home and she's leaving her apartment at the same time. She then tells me that I need to be more close to my bonus mom and that she has a reservation tomorrow at 11:30 for brunch. And apparently she wants me to go with her. And when she said this, I just kind of said, well, I'm actually working. Thank you, but I'm sorry, I couldn't do that. And yes, I know I need to be more clear, but it's really hard in the moment. Like, it's really scary and I just freeze up. She then asked me where I work and I just say, oh, just a random place. And she's like, oh, I'll have to come by. And I'm like, haha, yeah, that's great. And she's like, okay, well, come over now and I'll cook us dinner. And I said to her, hey, I'm sorry, I gotta go. I'm heading to go get groceries. And she's like, oh my God, buy me some detergent, please. I'm so weak, I can't get it on my own. I have to order everything here. And I was like, what are we talking about here? But she kept begging me and said, please. And at this point, I just said, sure. And I bought it for her and I left it at her door. And I went back and I just locked my door immediately. Well, guess what? She went outside and knocked on my door twice again. At this point, I'm genuinely scared. Like, I feel like I'm about to be in some kind of like true crime show. I really don't know how to set boundaries. It is so scary in the moment. She was also incredibly awful towards our shared landlord. And I want to message the landlord and say what she's been doing so she's eventually evicted. But maybe it's my fault because I'm not outright saying leave me alone. My mom says, oh, she's just a lonely old lady and it's my fault and I'm overreacting to be scared. But I don't know. I feel like I'm genuinely really freaked out. So am I at fault here because I don't know what to do? Okay, holy crap, dude, you need to like put your foot down. You need to tell her to buzz off or put her on like an information diet. And no, she's not your bonus mom. That's weird, dude. If this was me and I was in this situation, I would straight up tell her like, hey, you need to stop knocking on my door. Unless it's an emergency, don't knock on my door. I'm not interested. Like, and I know that might sound rude, but dude, sometimes you have to be mean to these people just to get a message across to them. Because this person, to put it bluntly, is completely racist. This sweet old lady living next door, she's not lonely. She's horrifyingly racist. Can you imagine if the original poster was like anything but white? Do you think she would have let you in the house? Like, I guarantee you she wouldn't have. And I don't know about you, but that is not someone I want to associate with at all. So no, I don't think you're overreacting. This lady's acting weird. She's almost like love bombing you in a way and trying to be like, oh, I'm your bonus mom. Which, by the way, she's saying after the first interaction you guys have ever had. Like, I don't know about you, but that's really creepy. And that is not something I would ever want to put up with. An entitled, spoiled, rotten child treats me like garbage at my work. But after this kid starts crying because I simply corrected him, this kid's entitled parents then demand that I apologize. But I simply refused to do so, and instead flipped the script and told them basically in a roundabout way that they are awful parents. Here's what happened. So this happened earlier this year when I used to work at a kids cafe. Think indoor playground with a coffee kiosk for rich people. Basically on weekdays, we would have hour-long programs. It would be 30 minutes of an activity, such as story time, crafting, board games, stuff like that, as well as 30 minutes of playtime in the playground. On the weekends, we would do a 2-hour-long themed camp program, where we would only do activities for the full 2 hours, no playing on the playground. At work, I would always look busy when parents come to drop off kids or pick up kids. We are supposed to cheerfully greet kids as they come in, then give parents feedback on how their kid did when they leave. But the thing about giving feedback, we have to lie. We are not allowed to say anything negative about the kid's behavior. So needless to say, I generally avoided speaking to the parents because I honestly don't care. And I think parents should know the truth. But I also wanted to keep my job and not get reprimanded for breaking a company rule. One Saturday, I was in charge of leading a camp. For camp, we had scripts that we should follow. It was the very end of the camp, and all the parents were waiting outside to pick up their kids. The cafe is located in a shopping mall, and our supposed walls were giant glass glass panels so everyone could see into the cafe. We were doing the last activity, which was to, quote, save the cute forest animals from a fire. The kids would take turns being a firefighter and run up and choose one animal to save, then bring it back and put it in the basket. I was sitting holding the basket with one hand and the script in the other, and 2 kids were left. I told one kid who's 8 years old to run up and save one of the animals. He grabbed 2 animals, so I told him, no, only 1 animal please. He then rolled his eyes and tossed the other animal to the side. He finally came down and put his animal in the basket. He asked to go again, and I told him that he could not do that because we had one more person to go who hadn't had a chance to get the animal, and it was almost time to go home anyways. He pouted and smacked the script out of my hand. He then laughed incredibly loudly, and it was honestly very annoying. I grabbed his hand and I told him to pick up the script and give it to me nicely, which he did. And I proceeded to tell him that his behavior was not nice and that now I wanted him to go sit down. At that point, he started crying and he sat down. I continued with the activity while he kept crying. My coworkers tried to comfort him, but he would ignore them and throw the candy that they offered him. So my manager came to me and told me to apologize to him for making him cry. I told her I didn't do anything to make him cry. He is just spoiled. The manager walked away, so I started to clean up the activity area. The manager came back and told me that this kid's parents were upset that I made their kid cry, and they demanded that I apologize. I look over and I see the entitled parents comforting their stupid child, so I loudly asked if they witnessed this kid's behavior. My manager said yes, but I was at fault for not comforting this stupid kid after reprimanding him. I loudly, especially so the entitled parents could hear, told her that I did not reprimand this kid. I told him to give me the script, and I told him that what he did was not nice. The entitled parents called over my manager and told my manager they would not be coming back to a facility with cruel employees that would bully a kid like that. They threatened to leave a bad review. My manager apologized so many times. These entitled parents told her that they would only accept an apology from me to them, as well as to their stupid kid. And when they said that, I refused. And I told these entitled parents that maybe if their child had some manners, we wouldn't be where we are right now. The entitled mother was very upset by what I said, but the entitled dad didn't say much. They grabbed their things and they just left. My manager told me that I should know better and that I need to read up on the company's policies and rules about how to deal with parents. The very next weekend, that same stupid kid came back and talked to me like nothing ever happened. And you know what? So did I. I don't like holding grudges against kids, but the entitled parents, on the other hand, asked the manager to ask me if I have something against this kid. So again, I said loud enough for these stupid parents to hear, kids can't teach themselves manners or how to behave properly. The parents need to do that. So of course I don't have a problem with this kid. The entitled parents just looked at each other and left before my manager could approach them. I didn't have any problems with the kid that day, but I did hear from my coworkers that the 2 parents asked the manager what days I didn't work just so they could bring their stupid kid in while I was not there. This is such a hilarious story to me because you can tell the original poster literally does not care if they get fired. They are legitimately almost welcoming it at this point. Like they basically said, oh, you want to fire me? You want to say I'm not following company rules? Okay, let me talk a little bit louder. And you know what? The fact that these parents are not jumping in and being like, no, my kid's an angel, they would never do that, for me is probably proof that they know exactly what this person's talking about, and they know for a fact that their spoiled, rotten child has absolutely no manners, and they did nothing to have any kind of positive patterns in this kid's life. And what kind of company would encourage your employees to lie to the parents? Like if I was a parent and my kid was acting up, I would absolutely want to know if my kid went goblin mode and did something absolutely heinous. Like my kid's gonna be punished if they acted up like that. There's no excuse. So good for the original poster for putting their foot down. Clearly, I think the manager knows that they're in the right, and hopefully some policy changes can come around that will fix this weird rule that you've got to lie to parents about their stupid kid, especially if that kid was acting up and being completely obnoxious. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for ghosting a former coworker of mine who was looking for a positive reference, but definitely did not leave his previous job in a good way? Here's what happened. So I work at a major university in the United States. I run a maintenance crew at night, and there's another shop who also works at night. We are in the same building, but focus on different kinds of work. Our shops get along great, and we usually help each other out on a regular basis. About 5 years ago, the other shop had an employee by the name of Bob. Bob was a really nice guy, but he was a physical manifestation of Pigpen from Peanuts. He was always dirty, he had torn clothing, he smelled terrible, and I won't even go into his dental hygiene. It was bad enough that his supervisor had to have a very uncomfortable discussion with him about using soap while washing and using deodorant. He made me uncomfortable more than a few times by alluding to his personal life with his wife, if you know what I mean. He wasn't explicit, but just thinking about how dirty he was made the mental image absolutely nauseating. Yuck. Well, he worked for this other shop for a few years when his marriage started having problems. As he put it, his wife was cheating on him with some previous boyfriends. Apparently, this wasn't the first time it happened, but he didn't want to divorce her since they had young kids, and he loved her so much. Well, he decided to deal with this situation in a way that basically got him fired. He had already been having some performance issues, and his supervisor really wanted to get rid of him. Unfortunately, at our university, getting fired is pretty hard to do. You have to get a warning, both informal and formal, multiple times, and then they can eventually let you go. It's a long, drawn-out process that frankly a lot of supervisors don't care to do. Therefore, there are lots of toxic employees that get away with terrible things. Anywhere else, they'd be gone in no time, but here, they have a lot of protection. There are ways to skip the line though. Obviously, bad things like violence or other harassment or even stealing can either get you fired right away or go straight to a final warning. If you screw up again after a final warning, you're done. Bob found himself in a very unique situation where he was able to skip the line. One day, his supervisor checked his work phone. As a fun fact, he is not entitled to privacy when he's using university phones or their computers. And the supervisor very quickly found some disturbing information. He called HR and they put together a fact-finding. This is a small group of people who investigate complaints or claims of bad behavior to figure out what happened. A lot of the times, it boils down to a he said, she said situation, and things are hard to prove. However, Bob provided all the proof they would ever need. Bob's supervisor discovered he downloaded some scandalous photos on his company phone with links to dating sites and history to Craigslist personal ads. They also found that he had linked his personal email to his phone and found emails of him setting up his rendezvous. He was doing all of this at work and even had his rendezvous at work, if you know what I mean, often in a company vehicle. The most surprising part was that he was meeting up with people while he was married to his wife. Eventually, when confronted about these facts, Bob confessed everything during the fact-finding. I wasn't even there, but the other supervisor confided in me afterwards. He said it was the most uncomfortable conversation he's ever had. Apparently, once Bob started talking, he just didn't stop. He willingly divulged all these details about him meeting up with people and basically cheating on his wife. After the meeting, HR needed some time to process everything, but the general consensus was that he would be fired. He was pulled aside by one of his coworkers, and they advised him to quit before he was fired. He did and was gone a few days later. I felt really sorry for him about his situation. I told him that if he needed a reference, that I would be happy to provide one, since obviously his supervisor couldn't honestly give him a good one. He thanked me and was gone shortly after that. A few weeks later, I started seeing emails for references for him come in. I didn't give him glowing references, but I gave him positive ones based on the work I saw him do. Since I technically wasn't supposed to know about the circumstances of his departure, I left that part out of my reference. I was trying to help him out, and that was a mistake. I'm not sure if it was his hygiene or what, but this guy either couldn't get a job or kept getting let go because I got a reference check after reference check. In total, I probably did 30 over 3 years. At first, it was him applying for other government agencies. Our university is technically a state agency. And then it focused on custodial jobs at churches and offices. Then he finally settled on what he wanted to do, working in the public school environment. But this is where I started to get uncomfortable, because based on his history of having rendezvous at his previous job, I thought him working at a public school really would be a bad idea. He started applying in areas where he lived, but started reaching further and further out in desperation for a job. I gave him references, but they were very neutral at best. Eventually, he got to my kid's school district. Bear in mind, he lives about 100 miles away from my school district, so he really was reaching. In almost 3 years of searching, no one was hiring him, so so he eventually just got all the way up to me and something in me just snapped. I gave him the single most negative reference I have ever given anyone, and I told them flatly not to hire him. I didn't go into specifics, but it was strong enough that there would be no way they would hire him. After that, I decided to ghost any of his reference requests. After about 6 or 7 ghostings, he finally stopped using me. Now, you might be wondering, why didn't you just talk to Bob and say that you don't think it would be a good idea for him to work at a school? But honestly, that is a conversation that I really didn't want to have. There is no way that I could have had that conversation without letting him know that I knew about the circumstances of his departure and basically accusing him of being a nefarious individual, if you know what I mean. There was no chance of that going well. It still shocks me that anyone could actively search for a job, any job, and could strike out for 3 years straight. I mean, if anything, just go to McDonald's or Costco. Become a sanitation worker so you don't have to worry about smelling at work. But overall, this begs the question, was I the jerk for giving up on him and ghosting his reference checks, considering all the information that I knew? I don't think you're the jerk at all in this situation. This guy clearly did not have it all together in his life, and honestly, all the problems he has legitimately is his own fault. So I would not feel guilty at all for ghosting his reference checks and for deciding, you know what, I just don't want to be a part of this. Because I know if I was in your shoes, I probably would have done the same thing. Today, I messed up by taking a shower at work. So to start things out, this actually happened this morning. After a 20-minute bicycle ride through the freezing Scandinavian winter, I arrived at work and figured it would be a good idea to take a warm and refreshing shower. Luckily, my workplace has some nice big bathrooms with shower facilities. I immediately head into the bathroom, drop my clothes on the floor, and step into the shower and relax for a good 10 to 15 minutes. After finally snapping out of my catatonic shower state, I draw back the curtains and I step out onto the overflowing bathroom floor. And by flooded, I mean that we probably had a good half-inch of water covering the entirety of the bathroom floor. I look over to the corner where my pile of clothes are simulating a cotton island, and they are completely saturated by water. So here I am, butt naked in the bathroom at my work with no dry clothes. My first thought was just to put it back on and hurry back home to change. But being soaking wet in sub-zero temperature could lead to severe pneumonia under the best conditions. The second option was to make a complete power move and walk out just wearing a towel and hope I could do a series of speech 100 skill checks to gaslight everyone else into thinking they were the weird ones and for them to hand over some clothes to me. Luckily, I had a third option. By a stroke of pure luck, I had placed my towel and my private cell phone on the sink, thus unscathed by the water. I frantically Googled my work to see if I could find the number of my boss, and thankfully I was successful. Now I just had to muster up the courage to call her and explain the situation and see if she could save me. It is also worth noting here that my boss is a lady in her early 30s, so it was of some importance to me that this would not come off as a ploy for some nefarious activity, if you know what I mean. Luckily, she had a good laugh about it, said I was a complete idiot, and found an old soccer shirt in the break room and dropped it in front of the bathroom. That solved some of my problem, but left me with the bottom half unaccounted for. At this point, however, I had spent the last 10 to 15 minutes twisting my jeans and running them under the hand dryer, so they had reached a state of acceptable humidity under the circumstances. At this point, it was about as good as it was going to get, so I went commando into the jeans and put on the soccer shirt and brought the rest of my clothes to a drying cabinet. At this point, I had no option but to get back to work while waiting for my blue-collar suit to dry up and just embrace the humiliation and the questions from my colleagues about why I was dressed like I was going to a festival. Knowing there was no way to stop the rumors from spreading, I figured I just might as well embrace the situation and get a good laugh with everyone else. This is honestly hilarious. You go to work just to try and get a shower to try and get some kind of warmth on your body, and then you find out you basically flooded the bathroom. Also, as a side note, I'm incredibly jealous that the original poster's work had a shower that worked. When I lived in colder climates, it would have been nice to take a quick shower and then get to work. But overall, this is just a really funny story. And hopefully, the next time you decide to take a shower at work, you put your clothes on the countertop instead of the floor. My father framed me for years for his cheating, and I'm only just finding out the details now, and I'm honestly disgusted. So I'm moving out right now. I'm going to live with a friend of mine and hopefully never see my family ever again. For years, I've lived in an abusive environment without ever talking about this, not even to my biological mother. mother. She was the only person I could reach out to, but lives far away and is happy. So I didn't want to burst into her life again after what my father did to her. I have been living with the burden of being a disgusting human being and deserving all that happened to me, that I didn't even consider it as abuse, but more like a well-deserved punishment. Only recently did I open up about a small issue anonymously online, and I think I'm addicted to it. I want to share more and more. No one will know it's me, so I spill all the tea without worry. To get to the point, I was accused of helping my father hide the fact that he was cheating on his new wife. It is quite comedic, but it's also so hard to prove that it wasn't like that at all. How can I prove this when his wife was participating in framing me? All that to seem like a good, respectable woman to her family, and not to admit that they were in an open relationship. I can't believe how stupid I've been for years now, blaming myself for what happened. Looking back now, I think I'll never recover from what happened, but I didn't even realize it was happening. My father used me like a scapegoat. No, even better, he used me as a punching bag, and it was all planned. My stepmother pretended to be my victim, and my stepbrother was her willing accomplice. Honestly, they could have all taken me out in my sleep, and it would have been a lot more merciful than what I went through. For years, I thought I had betrayed them and hurt them, but I was just their toy. I can't explain the level of acting they displayed. I don't think anyone would ever believe me either. Maybe I'm just insane. Honestly, I don't even know, because they guilt-tripped me into never seeking therapy and mental help. I regret not clinging to my mother and begging her to take me away from there when I was just a kid. I regret every single day I lived in their house. I think I need to explain it better. I don't think anyone will understand anything from the rant I've been on, but basically, my mother and father were married when he told me, a 9-year-old boy, that I had a brother and asked me to keep it a secret. He took me to my stepmother's house to meet him and build a relationship with them. I went home, I told my mother, because I didn't feel like hiding anything from her. My mother then confronted him, and when she found out, she was devastated. So she left him and never let him contact her again. My father literally blamed me and said that I broke our family. He kept doing it, pushing me or hitting me and giving me glares until my stepmother moved in with my stepbrother. I was a kid back then and never told anyone what happened, so I have no proof, but I remember, and I swear I remember all that. Honestly, I wish I was left with a scar or something, but no, I have nothing to prove anything I say. Nothing, no evidence, nothing I wish I could have shared with the world. When I was a teenager, around 15 years old, he took me out for some father-son time and separately took my stepbrother out too. When he was with me, he took me to see a lady of the night, and he had some fun, if you know what I mean, in the other room, while I was in the other room, trying to ignore everything. He took my stepbrother to movies and to the park, while I was there, having my sanity stolen from me. He told me not to say anything to my stepmother, and I know how pathetic it sounds, but I was scared of him. Just a glance and I was like an obedient dog. He said that if I didn't want to destroy this family too, then I better keep my mouth shut. And for a long time, I tried to force myself to tell my stepmother. I was waiting for him not to be home and to just tell her, but I was a coward, and I didn't say anything because I was scared of what would happen if this woman left him too. She soon found out when I was 15 or 16 years old, and that's when she started treating me terribly as well. She would do things constantly to basically make it feel like I was unwelcome in that home. She made my stepbrother hate me when I really loved him more than anyone. I really was close to him, and he was my only happiness, and he also became my abuser. Even my grandparents never bought any gifts for me. They would just glare at me as well, and they never spoke to me normally ever. But the reality of the situation was that her sister somehow found out that he was seeing other women and told their parents. Not to look bad in front of a traditional family, they made up the excuse that it happened only a few times and tried to wrap me up in this as an excuse, stating that I helped my father cover up the whole thing. And it's honestly all so disturbing. I only realize now, after all the mess and the self-blame that they never argued about, their relationship was affected, and until this day, they preserve that innocent facade in front of everybody, while I live surrounded by people who hate me. I always thought it was unfair for my father to be so easily forgiven, while I was still preserved, and it only clicked now, when I realized they were both in an open relationship, and pretty much everybody knew it. My father never protected me, and he honestly never cared. And hopefully, I never see these people ever again. Your your family sounds awful, but I really want you to know that it's never too late to go into therapy. And based on what you're talking about, I think that really could do a lot for you. You've been through a lot, your family has been awful to you, but you can't start anew. So hopefully moving out to be with your friends will hopefully be a good change in your life. An entitled Karen gets up in my face and screams at me to sit down at a concert, but I simply wasn't going to take it, so I snapped back at her just as hard and told her to shut up and mind her own business. And I've never been more nervous in my life. Here's what happened. So earlier this month, a friend who I will call Danger, that's obviously not their real name, texted me last minute saying he had 2 extra tickets for a Rick Springfield concert that night. When I say last minute, I mean he texted me at 6:45 and the show started at 8 o'clock. And I live a little under an hour away from the venue, but I had nothing to do. So off my mom and I went. Skip forward to the show itself. I'm vibing, having a good time, just enjoying some live music on a night I didn't expect to. But in between songs, this couple behind me is constantly yelling, and not the kind of yelling you expect at a concert, saying stuff like, sit down in front, stuff along those lines. Most of the yelling came from our main antagonist, the entitled Karen of this story. Both of these two were sitting down, which I get it. You're at a show where you have seats, so you are obviously taking advantage of that. But yelling at others to sit down because you can't see, whatever, I'm just gonna enjoy the music. Then it actually happened. This entitled Karen actually poked me. I assumed that one of the people behind me just bumped into me, so at first I just ignored it. But then I felt another poke, and that one was harder and obviously intentional. Seeing as it was right in the middle of my back, I turn and I'm face to face with this entitled Karen. Could you sit down? She demands as she points at my chair. Now, me being the nice person that I try to be, I happily oblige. I know what it's like not being able to see at shows. I mean, I could barely see Springfield on stage at the moment too. Plus, there were 2 giant screens projecting the show for people to see, so I could just watch those. Well, this wasn't good enough. This entitled Karen then screams, sit down. This went on during the breaks between 4 more songs. My mom kept noticing my building frustration and tried to calm me down. I texted Danger about this to relieve some stress and see what he would say. He was in a different section than me because he was planning to get a meet and greet. But I honestly couldn't take it. I just wanted to have a good time, and it was being ruined by this entitled Karen. This entitled Karen then shouted one more time, you need to sit down. And at that point, I was tired of being talked to like this, and I snapped at this lady in a way that I honestly never expected. I whipped my head around and I said, oh my God, will you shut up? We're trying to listen to the music. She screamed back at me by saying, well, I can't see. But I said, neither can I, lady. I can't see when I'm standing or sitting. There's a screen there and there. You can watch those. You can stand up or you can sit down and just enjoy it. We are here to listen to music and have a good time. Stop complaining and just relax, you Karen. This entitled Karen then just grumbled and said, whatever, and my name's not Karen. I eventually stood right back up and went back to having a good time, and there was no more yelling from behind. My heart was racing for a while after that. The thing you gotta know about me is I have really bad anxiety. So bad that my clinical diagnosis is agoraphobia. I have gotten a lot better, and music is something that has helped me with that. But never in my wildest dreams would I think I would snap at a Karen like this, especially without at least a shot of alcohol in my system. But I was sober, so that was intense for me. But here is where things get really interesting. A few songs later, I feel a gentle squeeze on my shoulder. Internally, I'm thinking, oh boy, here we go again. And I turn around to see this entitled Karen. She looks at me and says, I love the way you move. She's giggling at this point, referring to me bouncing to the music. I look at her and I say, thank you? Replying obviously very confused. Sorry about before. It's just so hard to see. Like that guy up there is like 7 feet tall. She said that referring to a man built like a tree a few rows up. I look at her and I say, oh, it's okay, I get it. I'm only 5 foot, so I can never see as well. We're just here to vibe and have fun. She then asks me and says, what the heck is a Karen anyways? Her question made me giggle nervously, prompting her to comment, oh, I love your giggle, that's so adorable. For the rest of the night, all was well. I had a blast. The Karen wasn't a Karen anymore, she would keep making little comments and apologizing as time went on. When Rick Springfield came into the crowd for one song, she kept nudging me and exclaiming, "Go up there." When it came time for the song Jesse's Girl at the end, she gave me a pat on the shoulder and said, "I'm gonna go up front," and I didn't see her again. Overall, it was a very interesting experience, but dear God, I don't ever want to have that experience of snapping at a Karen again. My stress levels were through the roof for days. As a side note, at the end of the night, Danger finally responded to my text message about the entitled Karen poking me in the back. His response, "Dude, absolutely destroy her." He has gotten very protective of me since he started calling me his little sister. So while I find that funny, I'm not at all surprised that's how he responded. What a weird situation. It's pretty obvious to me that she clearly had one too many drinks and suddenly she became super giggly all of a sudden, complimenting the person that was very clearly blocking their view. Overall, I think it kind of worked out in the end, and I'm right there with the original poster. I definitely don't like conflict in this way, but sometimes people push it way too far, and this entitled Karen definitely did just that. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My horrible cousin, who has been abusive towards me for several years, asked me out of nowhere in front of the entire family if I would be her maid of honor. But after all that I've endured for almost a decade of dealing with her, I turned this moment against her and I turned her down by saying no, saying that I would rather be just about anywhere than watching two clowns get married. And as a result, she's never gonna talk to me again, and I couldn't be happier. Here's what happened. So I have a cousin with whom I had a remarkably close relationship to the point that we were like sisters. That all changed when she was responsible for incidents that to this day made me reconsider our cousin-sister relationship. In 2012, when I was 16 years old, she gave me a strong relaxer that caused me to cut off 14 inches of my hair. For context, I used to relax my hair, and it was always soft or regular since I have fine hair. Her reasons? Because she started dating my ex, and he would not stop talking about my hair or my natural beauty. She stole friends from me and possible boyfriends from me. She turned family members against me, would rub in my face that she was my grandmother's favorite, and made fun of me for going back to my curly hair, all while mocking me for losing my older brother and sleep with my ex while on the process of moving together. She even made a post on Facebook mocking me for giving birth to my now passed away baby while 7 months pregnant. She also left threatening notes and a voodoo doll on my car. If you haven't caught on, she's not a very good person. I can keep going, but I don't want to make this any longer by explaining how messed up she is. At one point, I tried to get a restraining order on her, but the police thought I did not have enough evidence. I had texts of her admitting to doing it, but it was not enough. Or as one police officer told me, it could be faked. So I blocked her from all my social media and blocked her number, and the only times I would only see her were at family gatherings. But I would avoid her since I did not want her situation in my life, or I would avoid her to not have my mental health triggered by her. So in June, she got engaged to my ex, and I found out from my family members. For context, I found them together, and instead of screaming and crying, I laughed and told them to enjoy my sloppy seconds. So my aunt was celebrating her anniversary with a barbecue, meaning I would see her. I went and I was having an enjoyable time, but when at the table, one of my aunts asked her how the wedding planning was going, and she could not help but brag that it was good. And now she had an announcement, and she looked at me with a devilish smile. She asked me in front of everyone if I wanted to be her maid of honor, since thanks to me, they both met up. I was cold, and I told her no. And when I said that, she whined about it and said, "Why not?" And all I gave her was a look, and she actually said that it's time for me to put effort into fixing our sister-cousin relationship. I just laughed when she said that and told her that by the time she is having her wedding, I would be in college finals, and after that, a month-long trip for my anniversary, and that would be better than seeing two clowns getting married. Plus, I told her the reasons I said no. She then started crying and yelled that if I do not not do this, that I'm not invited to the wedding. But I just looked at her and I coldly said, fine by me, and I walked away, leaving her with a surprised Pikachu face. I have not spoken to her since that day, but all my family members support me, since they all saw how much of a horrible person she has been over the years. Good for the original poster for sticking up for themselves. There's nothing worse than having a family member who not only took advantage of you multiple times, but also mocked, ridiculed, and humiliated you multiple times, getting exactly what they deserve. And this lady definitely fits the bill. She is toxic, she was abusive towards you when you were teenagers, and she's clearly trying to manipulate you just as one last rub of salt in the wound that yes, she's getting with your ex-boyfriend and they're getting married. I mean, you would have been nuts to say yes to being her maid of honor. And let's talk about that cousin-sister relationship real quick. I think it's comical how she's leaving it on the original poster to try and fix that situation, when in reality, she's the one that did this to this relationship in the first place. It's honestly so toxic, and I really would not be surprised if this cousin is actually some kind of narcissist, because all the things that's being described definitely points to that being it. So hopefully the original poster is doing good with this decision, and they know that they made the right decision, because their cousin is crazy, and if I was in their shoes, I absolutely would have done the exact same thing. My job is super toxic, and it has managers who don't help out around the restaurant, and they all basically just bark orders and sit on their butts and do nothing all day. And things are not getting better, and I don't know whether I should quit or not, or if I should just get into something else. And I don't know what to do. Okay, so I've been serving for a while. I took a break for a couple of years, and now I'm back to it. I've been doing okay making great money, and had tons of tables compliment me. Had one find my manager and let her know I provided the best service that they've received in years. So like, yeah, I must be doing pretty good, right? My issue lies with management, mostly the shift leads. They're incredibly gossipy and very rude. I don't particularly care about the gossip, and I let them do whatever they want. Management doesn't do a lot at our restaurant. They don't run food unless there's some kind of allergy stipulation, and if asked to do something to help, they often roll their eyes, so I just avoid asking them unless absolutely necessary. One night, the bar was behind, and my appetizer came out before my drink. I asked the shift lead near the bar if there was anything that could be done about this, as we normally comp drinks or apps if this happens. She told me that the bar's behind and to just deal with it, essentially telling me to go pound some sand. Later, when I got a second, as the entire night was nuts, I asked the manager if there was anything we could do before their bill came. She said unfortunately no, because it had been too long, so she couldn't look up the drink times. She then asked me why I never asked them sooner, and I said actually I did, but was told that the bar was behind and to just deal with it. She asked who told me this, and I reluctantly told her the name of the shift lead. I overheard from others later that she was mad because I almost got her in trouble. The next day, I was unpacking all new shipments, as I was opening on a day we receive orders. Then I had to reset the entire dining side of the restaurant in 15 minutes after the fact. I was taking a longer while than expected, and so a different shift lead who was on her laptop all morning came next to me, started clapping, and started saying, "Chop chop, hurry up." I'm not sure if I took it personally, but I find it incredibly rude, considering she was just sitting in the booth while I was struggling. And maybe this is just the culture of management to not really do much of anything. After this, my shifts were cut, and it's really hard not to take this personally. We've received poor reviews on Google for individuals sitting close to the kitchen, stating that they are hearing people say, "That's not my job," especially from managers when they are asked to run the food. So the customers definitely are in the know, and they hear what's going on. So I'm at a point where I'm wondering, do I leave and go elsewhere, or do I tough it out and hope that it gets better? Because right now, I honestly don't know what to do. What a terrible work environment. You have management basically barking orders at you and clapping their hands telling you to chop chop, hurry up, but they're the last people involved when it comes to rolling up their sleeves and getting the job done. And that to me is incredibly inappropriate, and it's not fair. I'm also really hesitant to say that this will ever get any better. If I was in your shoes, leaving this job and looking for something else most definitely would probably be something I would consider, because these people are just super toxic. Like, that lady literally watched you as you're trying to set the restaurant up, and instead of helping, she just rolled her eyes and acted like a lazy bum. And what's worse, the restaurant gossip and pettiness is just gonna get worse and worse over time. Management clearly isn't facing any repercussions repercussions, and it doesn't seem like they're going to receive any kind of reprimand anytime soon. So looking for something else probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Otherwise, you're still going to get treated like garbage by people who clearly undervalue your time and effort to try and make this restaurant run in an orderly manner. Today, I messed up by dressing casually for work, only for one of my colleagues to mistake me as one of my clients, causing her to treat me terribly and tell me to get out of the back office that I was trying to go into just to do my job. And it was honestly incredibly humiliating. Here's what happened. So I work with marginalized people with complex needs, and my specific role relates to having lived experience of homelessness, addiction, and complex trauma. There are a lot of different elements to it that I won't get into because they aren't relevant, but I do some work at a service for rough sleepers, which is where I was today. Most of my colleagues dress very casually for work. I try quite hard to be presentable because I guess I'm a bit worried about being judged for my background, even though that's literally why they employed me. It's also my first time in this type of job. However, right now in England, it is absolutely freezing, and I had to layer up, which meant I wasn't looking very officey, if you will. I was still clean, and I don't think I was that scruffy or anything like that. My clothes were just a bit mismatched and too big for me. At the place I was working, there's a drop-in area for the clients and an office area, which is staff only. I mainly chill in the client area since they're the people I'm there to work with, and only really go in the office area when I need to talk to a colleague or need to sit at a computer or something like that. This week, a member of staff I hadn't met before had come back from maternity leave and was in the office. I went to the office to introduce myself. I opened the door and popped my head around. Without even looking up, she just went, "No." And I was like, "Okay?" And I just backed up. I figured she was on a sensitive phone call or something like that. It was still rude, but you know, whatever. As a side note, her tone of voice really vividly reminded me of how people sometimes talk to me when I was homeless. I remember once trying to get a woman's attention as she was walking past me, and she had just that type of voice. She would rudely say no and would just keep walking because I guess she thought I was begging. I was actually trying to tell her that her dress was tucked into her tights. Anyways, I just got on with things for a bit until I actually had to go into the office. I started walking in and she jumped out of her chair and was like, "No, you cannot come in here," and literally started shooing me out the door with her hands. I kind of just allowed myself to be shooed, which probably speaks volume about my self-esteem, but the service manager, who I know pretty well, had arrived in the meantime and was also in the office. She looked at me like, "What on earth are you doing shooing this guy away? He works here." At this point, the rude colleague obviously backs down, but explains that because of my presentation and manner, she assumed I was a client. And when she said that, I was like, "Oh, okay. So you're cool with shooing away clients. Fantastic. Why do you work here again?" She then barely apologized to me, and I just said, "Okay," and told the service manager I was going to finish up my paperwork from home. I went home and I honestly had a little cry, since apparently the only thing separating me, the professional, from me as a homeless junkie once upon a time is a poorly fitting hoodie and a dorky hat. Not a good day for my self-esteem overall, to be completely honest. Now, I've dealt with the self-pity aspect, and I'm mainly just upset that this is how she thinks she should treat her clients. The service manager has emailed me about making a complaint, which to be honest, I probably will, even though it's the last thing I want to deal with. That is honestly disgusting. The fact that that lady works there and would possibly treat a client like that just to shoo them out the door and treat them like some kind of burden is enough evidence to prove that she really should not work there. Like, she is definitely there for the wrong reasons and needs to find a better line of work. This is up there with like a teacher who absolutely hates kids but decided, "You know what, I'm gonna be a teacher and teach in public schools." Like, no, you treat people terribly and you shouldn't be there. So if I was in your shoes and I had the chance to file a complaint, you better believe I'm gonna file that complaint. This lady needs to learn her lesson and change her tone of voice as well as her attitude towards possible clients coming in and out of their facility. They need care, they need love, they need understanding, and more importantly, they need at least somebody on their team. And if this is seriously how she would treat their potential clients, then in my opinion, she definitely needs to work somewhere else. I may be falling for a friend of mine that I have known for years and truly consider one of my best friends, and I honestly don't know what to do. I'm a 27-year-old female, and I have a close bud who's also 27 years old, who lives out of state. We've been friends for years through a group and a mutual hobby, but we have never had anything flirty between us. Life changes, we changed, and we're now more compatible. We had a friend trip recently, and he flirted with me. But since it was out of nowhere, and we were both kind of under the influence, I gently shut it down. He made it crystal clear that he thinks I'm hot and have a great personality, and that I would be a top contender for the hypothetical situation of if we're both single down the line, we should just get married. Since that trip, I have not been able to stop thinking about him and that night. Maybe it's a bit too much info to share, but desire has been off the charts, and I feel like I missed an opportunity that I would have enjoyed. Still, we are dear friends, and I want to tread lightly. I don't know where he is at, or if alcohol was a factor in his behavior, or anything like that. Feelings are also tied up in this, and although I know I would like to spend some quality time with him, if you know what I mean, I don't know what I would want moving forward. We live far apart with no easy way to change that in the next few years. I also love this man, and I do not want to lose his friendship. There is a high chance that if we spend some quality time together, I will catch feelings. I don't know how he feels. I just know that he loves me as a friend, but we are also very different people emotionally. I also don't know that he is as concerned with the longevity of our relationship versus having immediate satisfaction. I'm having trouble with the wisest course of action. Our hobbies include overnights and shared sleeping accommodations, and I'm not going to avoid those. And as close as we are, and as much as I trust this guy, he's also a flirt, and he will approach women at bars. And I'm much more shy, to be honest. I don't want to toss our friendship over a night of quality time. This night also included vulnerability, a few tears, light cuddling, and affirming how much we really loved each other. We've been through some real stuff together over the years, and there's a ton of trust and affection. What do I do now? He's visiting again in a few weeks. If anyone has been in a similar situation or has advice on how to get clarity on what I really should do, I'm honestly open to hearing it. I feel like I would have shut this down with any other guy friend, but I don't know if I'm just lonely and vulnerable right now, or if this is really something that I want. What should I do? I think you really do have to just weigh the options, but I think from the outside looking in, it really looks like you guys already have a very high connection. Like, you never know. It might be a situation worth pursuing to some degree. You can even try and take it slow. I mean, you're both old enough to know how to do that at this point, hopefully, and you can maybe articulate that you want to try and take this slow if he's interested. So in my opinion, I say just go for it. You never know unless you try, and if he really is as good of a friend as you're saying, then I'm sure he would be understanding, and he would still want to be just friends with you if he doesn't feel the same way. But nothing ventured, nothing gained. So you might as well try and make some kind of move while you have the chance, because truly, who knows what could happen. An entitled Karen comes into our restaurant demanding food that we don't offer, and when she gets food that she doesn't like, she freaks out and storms into the kitchen to give me a piece of her mind, and I honestly could not be more shocked. Here's what happened. So for context, I had fairly recently started working as a server, and I wasn't fully familiar with our menu, and this was my first time dealing with an insane customer. Luckily, I have some pretty thick skin, and it didn't get to me for the most part, but it was crazy to experience how wacky some people can act. I was working the 11 to 5 shift, and the 10 to 3 server had just left, and the 3 to whenever server hadn't arrived yet. So it was just me in the front, as well as the 2 cooks in the back. The restaurant was empty after the lunch rush when the phone rang. I answered with my typical greeting, and the lady on the other line immediately cut me off, telling me her order that she wanted. But I needed to know if this was a to-go order before I could enter the food items in our system. As I started to ask if it would be a dine-in or takeout situation, she cuts me off again and says, "We'll be there in like 5 minutes, just have it ready," and very promptly hangs up on me. I think to myself, great, whatever she ordered wasn't going to be ready in 5 minutes, but I put it in anyways. But even better still, nothing she ordered was on the menu, which is one of those situations where you think, oh well, when she shows up, we'll figure it out when she gets here. And sure enough, 5 minutes later, in she struts with her sheepish boyfriend in tow. She plops down in a booth and kicks off her shoes and kicks her bare feet up. I walk over with a smile and 2 menus, and she yells at me that she doesn't need a menu. She just ordered on the phone. I let her know that we don't actually offer burritos because this is a burger place. And when I said that, she looks at me and says, "Well then, what do you offer then?" I tried to answer that question by handing her a menu, but she rejects it again. "Do y'all have tacos?" I say, "No, but we do have barbecue chicken quesadilla. Do you want to try that?" She looks at me in annoyance and says, "Fine, whatever." The sheepish boyfriend had taken a menu and decided to order a Caesar chicken salad. I go to the back and I start making the salad, and I can hear her on her phone loudly loudly complaining about me and calling me all kinds of vile things. Their food comes out and she takes one bite and spits it out in front of us. She starts screaming, "Why is there barbecue on this?" By now, the general manager was aware of what was going on, so he went out there to try and handle the situation. He comes back into the kitchen with a quesadilla to make a new one without barbecue. And what happens next absolutely blew my mind, as this entitled Karen crossed a line I never expected. Seconds later, the lady burst into the kitchen and actually said, "Actually, I don't even want it anymore." She then turns to me and starts to scream at me about how she was a server once and decided to give me some advice about how to do my job. Mind you, she went back into the kitchen to try and give me this advice, but I just looked at her with a sweet smile and thanked her for the advice. She then stormed out of the restaurant. Her sheepish boyfriend stayed to finish his salad and came up to the register to pay. He said to me, "I'm very sorry," and left a great tip for me on his way out, which may be the only good thing that came out of this interaction. What an absolute weirdo. This lady not only calls in trying to secure her order, which by the way, that's very strange for a sit-down restaurant, but she also comes in and kicks her shoes off and puts her bare feet on the table. That alone is absolutely disgusting. And unfortunately, it's not that crazy to assume that that could happen, especially when you consider that this lady is a server and she sees weird entitled Karens like this all the time. It's almost like this lady just did not know where she was in the slightest. She not only did not know what was on the menu, but she also freaked out when there was barbecue chicken on her quesadilla, despite the fact that she's like, "Yes, I'll have that." I mean, at that point, you just gotta get a grip, in my opinion. So hopefully, if anything, the boyfriend in this situation can come to his senses and see exactly who he's dating, because it sounds like he's conditioned to the way she acts on a daily basis, and hopefully he can see through these temper tantrums and find somebody who won't embarrass him in public. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. I ghosted my ex-boyfriend because I was tired of his lazy attitude and his lack of motivation in life. And now, after so long, he sends me an email demanding to know why I ghosted him, and I honestly don't know what to do. So I'm a 40-year-old female, and I used to date a man by the name of Mickey. That's not his real name. This was a long time ago, and he used to be my lifelong crush. I was super happy to find out that we had excellent rapport. Our conversations were deep. He showed me a very loving and compassionate side that was completely separate from the shallow jock I remember that he was. So needless to say, we go really far back. We would talk every day. Personal meetings were very fulfilling. I love that he seems super down to earth. Back then, I was still trying to get my goals off the ground. Because he had unfulfilled ambitions, and this was eating him up, I told him that he needed to get back on the horse and keep fighting. Whenever he asked for advice, I helped him out. For some context, he got fired from 2 of his dream jobs, and he basically lost everything. Eventually, I began to notice that he was incredibly lazy and was unwilling to do anything out of his comfort zone. I mean, he refused to learn any new skills, and he simply refused to do anything to try and build his resume up in any way, shape, or form. It simply did not interest him. I encouraged him to update his certification, and he promised to produce the certificate after he said he was certified, but in the end, that never happened, and he just ended up giving me a very vague explanation that led me to believe that the certificate in question wasn't even issued to him. Eventually, he stopped getting in touch. I can't say I was hurt or that I cried, but I was honestly mortified. At that point, I felt like I'd just been played. His subsequent calls were only to ask for favors at that point, and that really upset me. I didn't do anything that he asked because it made no sense after months of low contact with him. I took a long, hard look at our relationship, and I forced myself to understand that he had unhealthy patterns. His last 2 ex-girlfriends had very serious mental health conditions. They were both diagnosed with schizophrenia and had psychotic episodes. One also had bipolar disorder. He expressed satisfaction during one of our last conversations on how he relied on female friends just to get stuff done for him. He even admitted that he recruited his female contacts to verbally attack an ex-girlfriend on Facebook and to eventually have her profile basically deleted. And this brought me back to really think about his ex-girlfriends. And I felt that quite possibly he would only try to get with them or be around them for his own benefit. For example, one was very wealthy and lived in opulence, but he eventually had to move to his own place when they broke up. And another one let him move in after he lost his second best job, and she just lives on a good pension. It really seemed like he was targeting vulnerable women just for his own gain. He then sent me an urgent text message stating that he needed my help right away. He was about to go into a job interview, and apparently he needed coaching to try and write his resume, but I wasn't up for it. So I sent him a link with instructions, which he complained were too complicated. And in return, with him acting like a spoiled child, I ghosted him completely. He called, and after ignoring his call, I decided just to call him back and decline his request and just get it over with. He didn't even take my call, but wrote me back that he's actually too busy to talk right now. And after that, I just blocked him on everything, and I made sure that he would never have access to me ever again. I had already outlined his resume months earlier, but I guess he was too lazy to even retrieve that from his email. To be honest, I think he's just a complete loser. His work history is full of inactive gaps, and everything is truly underwhelming. What turned me off was his willingness to let someone else do the hard work for him. He literally had no drive in his life. Fast forward, and I actually have an email from him after such a long time. He wishes me the best, among other things, and is currently begging me to tell him why I disappeared. Now, I hate lying, and I don't think it's okay just to say, I cut you off because you're a complete leech, and I think you're a complete loser. Frankly, I ghosted him because I felt that even talking to him was truly to no avail. I honestly just want to close this door for good and move on with my life, but I'm honestly not sure how to do it, and I don't know what to do. It really sounds like your ex-boyfriend is a complete leech. I mean, it really does sound like he just plays his ex-girlfriends for his own benefit, and that's about it. Like, he doesn't consider anybody else's feelings, and he just wants people to basically run his life for him, which really is not fair for you or anybody else he's ever dated. That's honestly super toxic, and you can do so much better than that. I think you also need to realize that you really don't need to explain yourself to this guy. Like, he does not deserve any kind of explanation in the slightest. If he's not self-aware enough to see exactly how toxic he's been and how he basically takes advantage of people left and right, then he really is the one with the problem, and he should figure that out for himself. Because I bet you're the first person to ever put your foot down and say, nope, I'm not talking to you anymore. And it probably completely blew his mind that you brushed him off and ghosted him. So whatever you decide to do, just know that you have it right. This guy is a complete loser, and you 100% don't owe him a single thing. My boyfriend threw a temper tantrum after I asked him very kindly to please trim his beard, as it bothered me when it touched my cheek. And now, because I said that, he's acting incredibly childish, and I honestly don't know what to do. So my boyfriend does not really give lots of attention to his appearance. So he really doesn't do much about clothing or about the way he appears. The other day, I asked him sweetly by text message, stating, hey, if you wanted to, could you trim your facial hair the next time we meet? Because it hurts my face when we're close to each other. I also continue telling him that I think you look better in my eyes with your facial hair trimmed as opposed to it just being grown out. When I sent him that, he only pressed the like button, which usually happens when he is mad. So the next time we meet up, he came without his facial hair trimmed, which was okay, but I felt something was wrong. And later, he started a discussion asking me if my attraction to him is influenced by something so trivial as facial hair. I responded to this by saying, no, I like that too, but I honestly find you much more attractive if you take care of your facial hair, as well as your appearance in general, instead of just leaving it unkept. And after he said that, he finally said, it's okay if you ask me, but you shouldn't be telling me what you like, because I already knew that. Now, as a side note, his facial hair is not fully developed. It has random patches, as well as lone curly hairs at random places. The last time he trimmed it was when he went for a haircut at a barber 5 weeks ago. So the result was long hairs and patches, and it really was not pleasant to the eye, and it just did not look good. Nor did the feeling of it rubbing against my cheeks feel good at all either. He didn't seem satisfied with my answer, so he then said, this is like you're trying to micromanage my appearance. This is who I am, and I find it extensive and exhaustive to trim my facial hair more than once every 2 weeks. Now, when he said this, I was taken aback, and I explained to him that it was okay not to do that. But I then asked, don't you care about how I feel about your looks? It's not like I was asking you to shave your hair every day with a razor. I'm just asking you to trim it back just a little bit. He then said, it shouldn't matter if you love me. If you want a guy that's regarding himself as a jewel and is taking care of his appearance all the time, that is not me. I find that kind of cringy. At that point, I ended the conversation because I found it absolutely exhaustive to fight over something so trivial, but I can't shake the feelings that he really started this argument for something so benign and easy to do. The next day, he came home again untrimmed and asked asked me, "So, were you expecting me to come in with my hair trimmed again?" And at that point, I just didn't even reply. It's too exhausting and it's starting to not be worth my time. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Your boyfriend's being a little overdramatic, don't you think? I mean, it's just facial hair. And he really is contradicting himself left and right. He said that he doesn't really care about his appearance and highly implied that he won't be taking care of his appearance anytime soon. And his excuse to not want to shave every 2 weeks is really, really lazy in my opinion. Like that literally would just take 5 minutes, if anything, to take care of. So he's being really ridiculous. I think this might be a case where this guy just doesn't like people telling him what to do, so he will go against the grain just to try and prove some kind of weird point. And in my opinion, that's just like super toxic. There's no need for that. It's just really weird. And if anything, that in and of itself is incredibly cringy. And to top it all off, he doesn't even have a good beard. The original poster described it as having patches and basically having something akin to like some kind of neck beard. And if that's the case, I can completely understand where this lady's coming from, where she's asking him to try and trim it down because it feels weird against her face. And she simply doesn't like it. I really don't think this was that big of a deal, but the boyfriend in this situation escalated this into something that was absolutely crazy. So hopefully you can work out this situation because your boyfriend's being an absolute moron right now, and it really would just take about 5 minutes for him to trim down his beard and have some semblance of a clean appearance. My family is giving me an ultimatum, forcing me to choose between my boyfriend or them. And at this point, I don't know what to do. So I have been dating my boyfriend by the name of Charlie for just over a year. Charlie is not his real name. My mother and I were talking about Christmas and what our plans were going to be. I had invited Charlie to Christmas last week, and I relayed this to my mother. Christmas is going to be hosted at my mother's sister's house. I was then informed by my mother that Charlie is not welcome at my aunt's house for Christmas. For some backstory, there was an incident that happened in the summer, which my mother and aunt found out about, and ever since then, my relationship with both of them has changed for the worst. Basically, the way Charlie treats me and our romantic relationship was to both of them incredibly disgusting, and they jumped to some awful conclusions that definitely were not true in the slightest, and things have been extremely rocky ever since then. It was something private that honestly is really nobody's business, but they definitely made it their business. I attempted to defuse the situation at the time, but my mother was having none of it and has been threatening to tell my father all about our love life. My mother and aunt really do believe that Charlie is treating me terribly, which is so far from the case it's not even funny. My aunt then went home and told her husband, my uncle, about what she saw, and now as a result, he also hates Charlie. Now, Charlie and his family already suspect that my family does not like him. Charlie's mother is constantly making comments about his lack of coming over to my house to build a relationship with my family. Comments about me hanging out with one of my brothers and sister-in-law and not extending the invitation to Charlie in the slightest. To be honest, Charlie's mother sticks her nose in our relationship and it is quite exhausting. But this is a completely different issue. My mother told me in September that no one in my immediate family likes Charlie, and it's not for the initial private reason that we discussed. And I'm just feeling very hurt and upset about the whole situation. My mother proceeded to gaslight and manipulate me by telling me that this may be one of my father's last Christmases. He has had 3 mini strokes in the past year and has issues with his balance, memory, speech, and it all really is starting to go downhill for him. She then says that none of my brothers will ever treat Charlie as a friend or a family member, and that Charlie is just another boyfriend, and he's not my fiance or my husband. She also threw in that next year when I have my own plans, I can do whatever I want. I can come to family get-togethers, I can come and go as I please, and I can even go no communications with everyone that I want. She basically laid out every option to me, and I was honestly just shocked, and I didn't say a single thing to that. I have been trying really hard over the last 6 months to mend this relationship, to try and fix things and be more present at home. I was spending a lot of time with my boyfriend at his house, as well as with his family, and ever since then, I have scaled back dramatically, and for this to be dropped on me all of a sudden is just a major blow. The conversation ended with my mother actually giving me an ultimatum. She said I can either have Christmas at my aunt's house without Charlie, or I can have Christmas with Charlie and his family. So now I'm at a point where I don't know how I'm going to be able to show my face at my aunt's house after this. So do I now go to Christmas at my aunt's house without Charlie? Or is there another route that I should go? I just do not know what to do because either way, I disappoint someone very important to me, and I will be the one ending up very heartbroken and very hurt. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Your mom is being incredibly toxic. For starters, the fact that they're putting their nose in your business is absolutely disgusting in my opinion. I spared some details in the beginning of this story about their romantic relationship, but needless to say, the things that they were getting upset about really is nobody else's business but the original poster and Charlie, and I'll just leave it at that. But when it comes to your mom actually giving you an ultimatum of any kind, this is like narcissist 101. Anytime there's some kind of ultimatum that pops up in conversation, that in my opinion is a massive red flag, and that should be a very clear indication that what's happening currently is not right. So hopefully this can all work out for you, because it really does seem unfair for you to have to choose between your boyfriend or your family, and hopefully there's some kind of future where Charlie is welcomed back into the family and there won't be so much tension in your lives. My partner's mother is unbelievably toxic and truly will be the reason why I choose not to marry him because of the way she treats me. And I'm at a loss and I really don't know what to do because my boyfriend refuses to address these issues with her and draws some kind of boundaries to prevent her from treating me like garbage all the time. Here's what happened. So I have been in a relationship with John for the last decade. John is not his real name. Due to circumstances surrounding my family, I've lived with him, first with housemates and now on our own, for the last 9 years. We have had our issues over the years, but we've worked hard to get through them. We are now in a better and more stable and secure place than we have ever been. And right now, we're talking about marriage and children far more seriously than we ever have in the past. Now, the only issue in all of this is his mother and his immediate family unit. His extended family are amazing people, and tellingly, none of them have anything to do with John's immediate family. They are such a point of contention that even at the age of 20, I told John I didn't want to ever marry him for no other reason other than his mother. We'll call her Anna. That's not her real name. Anna essentially took one look at me 10 years ago and decided I was not good enough for her son. But she took it to such extremes. For example, the first time I ever visited her, under a year into our relationship, she felt it was appropriate to passive-aggressively comment about me choosing not to wear makeup to dinner in the torrential rain that we were experiencing that day. At this said meal, she and her friends openly trashed on the fact that John paid for me and that we didn't split the bill right then and there. After that visit, she relayed to John that she didn't approve of me because apparently to her, she decided that I didn't shower enough. And she determined that because I didn't wash my hair every day, that meant I wasn't showering at all. A year or so later, Anna and her husband Bill and their 2 sons came to help us move, along with my parents. My mom caught Anna complaining to Bill about how lazy I was and the fact that I wasn't helping by carrying boxes up and down stairs, but instead I was just unpacking. My mom reminded Anna that I have a fairly well-hidden physical disability that affects my coordination and movement, so that wasn't easy or safe for me like it was for everybody else. Anna just went silent and didn't even bother to apologize for saying that stuff about me. And these are just a few examples that really illustrate her character. There have been many more comments made about me, and probably even more than I've even been told about. And ever since then, I have only seen her twice. It's made easier by the fact that she doesn't care to visit her son and expects him to go to her. And of course, I am never invited to any of these plans, and I am completely fine with that. Recently, John has been rather obviously hinting that he's going to be proposing soon. I want to marry him, I really do. But the big issue for me is that he never argues against anything his mother says, and that's whether it's concerning me or not. He just brushes off whatever she says and claims that this is just the way she is, and there is no point in starting an argument over it because she's never going to change anyways. I've been telling him for years that I need him to understand that either he has my back and he puts her in her place, or our marriage will not include her family and neither will the lives of our future kids. And that is a hill I am honestly willing to stay on in this relationship. However, every time I have brought this up in the past, he will entertain this topic for about 5 minutes and then he just shuts it off and stops engaging in the conversation. So I guess my actual question through all of this is just that. How do I communicate that this is a very serious boundary for me and that if he wants to marry me, then this is something we absolutely have to address? So let me get this straight. After 10 years, he is still unwilling to stand up to his mother and tell her basically to get lost and mind mind her own business when it comes to you and your relationship with him, I mean, that is a big, big red flag in my opinion. He needs to stand on his own 2 feet and tell these people to basically get lost. And this has been going on for over a decade. I mean, just imagine how badly this mom's gonna treat you when you finally do get married and have some kind of kids in your life. She's gonna demand that you come over with the kids, and she's probably gonna treat them like garbage as well. There really is no fixing the situation with your mom, aside from your husband getting involved and setting a very clear line in the sand and basically telling her, hey, this is my wife. You're not gonna talk to her like that, and you're not gonna make these kind of nasty remarks ever again. Otherwise, you are out of my life. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing. If he really loves you, he will recognize that the way his mom is acting is incredibly toxic and completely inappropriate moving forward. So hopefully he understands where you're coming from, because otherwise this is going to be a rough marriage if you do decide to go through with it. His mom is toxic, and she really does not deserve any part of either of your lives. An entitled Karen makes false accusations of harassment at work, all with the sole intention to try and get as many people fired as possible. And I honestly have never been more disgusted with another person's actions in my life. Here's what happened. So whenever I'm at work, I usually tend to stay on my coworker's good side, and I never start any trouble, while other coworkers do try to start things between themselves, and somehow I always end up being part of it. Usually I remain neutral throughout the issue, or I try not to get involved with the main source of the issue. But this coworker in question went about making false accusations about our head cashiers, as well as the cashier supervisor and even a fellow associate from a different department, stating that all of them were harassing her. And this even got to the point that one of them was fired and the others were given harsh warnings. So this entitled Karen would always complain about everything. She would complain about where she was stationed at, her lack of hours, even though she's technically giving away her hours or calling out, and calling the manager's store phone number, claiming that the head cashier is apparently abusing her by making her stay outside in the garden center and refusing to let her wear a winter coat despite the head cashier giving her time to go get her coat, only for this entitled Karen to then say, "No, it's fine, I don't need a coat." Then she calls management sobbing that she's cold and wasn't allowed to go get her coat in the first place. This caused our head cashiers and our department supervisor to almost get fired multiple times. Luckily, the cameras were there to back up their claims, and they got a write-up along with several warnings. Eventually, some of the cashiers pointed out that most of the time, this Karen of a coworker doesn't actually work and actually spends most of her shift FaceTiming with her friend. Then, about a week later, a cashier was fired, and this is all because this entitled Karen figured out which cashier outed her to management and made up some kind of sob story about the cashier harassing her, even when everyone else, myself included, backed up the cashier, telling management that this cashier never harassed this Karen. But unfortunately, management was sucking up to this Karen, and the cashier never came back after that. The second coworker to almost get fired was the hardware associate. He had seen this entitled Karen get her first House Depot badge for getting a lot of surveys done or something like that. So he came and gave Karen a gentle pat on her shoulder to congratulate her. Karen, with the most disgusting look on her face, as if this guy had just spit in her face, screamed back at him, "Back off, don't touch me." This hardware associate was incredibly surprised and shocked at the sudden outburst that was directed right at him. He held up his hands while backing off and said to her, "Whoa, sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. I was only congratulating you for getting your first badge." But this entitled Karen doubled down. She said, "You weren't congratulating me. You were invading my personal space, harassing me, and touching me without my consent." Sally, one of our head cashiers and supervisor, tries to calm down this Karen, but the entitled Karen refused to calm down unless the hardware associate apologized for touching her without her consent and to stay away from her, to which the hardware associate did apologize and kept his distance from then on. Apparently, even after the hardware associate had apologized to the Karen, and all of the cashiers and myself included heard him say it, this entitled Karen went to management to report this guy for supposedly harassing her and also making advances towards her while they were on break together. I didn't find out until my next shift that due to this accusation, this guy nearly got fired and wasn't allowed to work for a couple of weeks until it was all sorted out. By the time everything was sorted out between the Karen and this guy, Karen had already turned in her 2-week notice because she refused to work anywhere near this guy because she claimed that she didn't feel safe around this guy, even though management had found out that this Karen lied about him making advances towards towards her. After this guy was allowed to return to work and the Karen quit for a safer job away from him, this guy openly said that if they did fire him, he would have been fine with it because it'll show management that they need to stop sucking up to this stupid lady as well as other entitled customers' ridiculous demands. Because in his words, all the good associates are leaving because management can't say no to bad customers or bad associates, and management would rather just suck up to somebody just to try and save their own butts. I found out that this entitled Karen had started working at Walmart near my house, and when she saw me, she asked if that guy who apparently made advances towards her still worked there. I responded by saying, yes, but he never did that. That's just what you said, not me or the other associates who work there. And when I said that, this entitled Karen, probably for the first time ever, just straight up shut up and walked away. But since COVID started, I haven't seen her there anymore. She probably left for another job or moved up in department status. Either way, hopefully no one she ever runs into ever has to deal with those types of false accusations ever again. The way this entitled Karen was acting is absolutely inappropriate. Like, there's just no good excuse for anything that she was doing. She was literally making things up just to try and get people fired. And sure, the one coworker probably should not have patted that lady on the shoulder, but at the end of the day, what he was doing honestly was innocent, and it did not warrant this type of reaction in the slightest. I can't stand people who act like this, and they're just finding ways to try and abuse whatever privilege they have just to try and ruin someone else's life. So hopefully karma comes back to bite her one day and gives her back exactly what she deserves, because she had no right to take away these people's jobs and to basically try and ruin someone's reputation. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My family wants to punish my aunt for rescheduling a holiday dinner that they were planning on going to, and as a result, I'm being dragged into this family drama in a way that I never signed up for, and I honestly don't know what to do. So my aunt has always hosted most holiday dinners, and as we've gotten older, it's become much harder to get everyone together. She chooses a date and a time based on when she and her own kids are available, and then announces it to the rest of the family. If we can attend, that's great, and if not, that's just how it is. I completely understand that trying to coordinate 25 plus adults during the holiday season is nearly impossible, and if she were to ask about everyone's availability, she would inevitably end up having to choose a date that she knew someone wasn't available for, and that would create a whole other set of issues. And for the record, I've never really had a problem with how she goes about scheduling the event that she's hosting. As a side note, my mom would be happy to host, but my aunt always ends up doing it. I'm not sure if there's some kind of rivalry or hurt feelings there of some kind that I'm not aware of, but again, I don't really see the big deal. Either accept things how they are or say something and advocate for change. This year, one of my aunt's kids ended up changing their schedule at the last minute and wasn't going to be able to attend on the original date planned for the Christmas dinner. My aunt has now decided to reschedule it, and now some of the people who couldn't attend the original date are now able to join us. But now because of that, some people won't be able to make it. My sister is one who's available for the original date, but won't be able to come to the new one because she's working. I think it's important to note that she didn't schedule any time off of work for the original date. It was just a happy coincidence that it lined up in the way that it did. Nobody was asked about availability for either date as well. My husband now thinks that we should boycott the whole thing and try and make some kind of weird point by making this big show and tell about one person missing the event by having half the family not show up in protest. This way, in his mind, this will hopefully maybe sink in that she shouldn't change the dinner. My sister is also suggesting that we just invite that whole side of the family to the Christmas dinner that I'm hosting on the 25th for my parents, my siblings, and my grandparents. I will be 31 weeks pregnant and not super keen on going from 9 people to 25 plus people, all on Christmas Day at that. We're also well aware that this aunt and her kids are the only ones who wouldn't be able to attend that day, and that to me feels like that would be really petty and toxic behavior. So I'm kind of stuck at a crossroads, and I honestly don't know what to do. I honestly would not play into some weird drama that you're clearly not a part of, and good for you as well. You've managed to stay out of this garbage in a really wonderful way where you are clearly left out of the loop, and in this case, it's probably a good thing. There's clearly some family drama going on involving your aunt and this stupid Christmas party, and now your husband and your sister are trying to use your private Christmas party as some weird petty form of protest, all at the expense of your plans and your expectations. And if I was in your shoes, I would not play into into that for a second. I would not start inviting more people and saying, hey, let's do this as some kind of protest, because that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Drama like this really does happen around the holidays, but that does not mean that you have to deal with that for a second. So if I was you, I would put your foot down and say, no, we're not inviting more people. I'm going to be 31 weeks pregnant, and there's no way I'm going to be dealing with that. And honestly, you shouldn't deal with that. They're just doing this to try and get back at this aunt for some dumb reason. And they're using you as a pawn in their stupid chess game. And I just would not play into that for a second. I'm also really on the original poster side here. If you can make the party, fantastic. But if you can't make the party, then go do something else. Like, the people who are complaining about this are all adults in this situation, right? Are they really incapable of not trying to punish a family member, all because they tried to reschedule it where their kids could show up to the dinner? Like, this honestly feels so ridiculous at this point. So hopefully all of this can work out for you, because your family's being super obnoxious, and there's no reason to punish your aunt, all because she's trying to reschedule the dinner so that she can spend time with her kids on Christmas Day, which, by the way, is not that unreasonable of a request. I'm convinced that my wife's friend secretly wanted me and my wife to get a divorce behind our backs, and I'm honestly disgusted by the way she acted, and I don't know what to think. So my wife and I have been married for 2 years. After 1 year of marriage, we were going through a rough patch due to some emotional issues that led me being resentful and frustrated. At that time, my wife's friend, who my wife knew for more than 8 years and has been friends with her since they were in school, was already living with us. She moved in with us a few months ago, before this rough patch that we hit, as she came to the country we were living in for her new job. Now, I'm an introvert, but I badly needed someone to vent to. So when the rough patch hit, opening up to my wife's friend was fairly easy, as we both were always joking and talking with each other around the house. To my surprise, after only hearing my side of the story, she immediately told me to reconsider the relationship with my wife. Thankfully, I was not willing to break up with my wife, as I still cared about her. Fast forward and months went by, and this friend started making some remarks when we were both alone, or when my wife was not at home. She would say things like, if I had a man who cooked, I would literally tell him to just move in with me. Or something like, why does she always call you honey or babe? Your relationship is super unhealthy. Another time, when I had to go to work out of town, she told my wife out of nowhere that I'm going to leave her one day. In another similar incident, I told this friend that I might break up and go to a different country, and she said, you can't do that alone. It would be better if you did it with someone else. And her tone really hinted that she wanted to go with me. Even when me and my wife got engaged, she never congratulated my wife or me and acted really weird about it overall. Eventually, me and this friend became kind of close emotionally. A cousin that I was very close to passed away, and my wife and I got into a huge fight. I was sitting in the balcony at around midnight with tears in my eyes when this friend came to me and started rubbing my back and tried to comfort me. Eventually, I told her about my memories with my cousin, and I just talked to her about what was going on. She cried a little bit too, and we hugged each other for a good 1 to 2 minutes. We didn't tell my wife about any of this. The point is to be noted is that this friend never even hugged my wife or even cried in front of her. She is emotionally that reserved and prefers to be alone most of the time. 2 weeks later, me and my wife decided to move to another country, and as we were moving, forgot a locket that belonged to her, but I decided to try and keep it as a memory. But I very quickly realized that this was the wrong thing to do. So I texted the friend that I left the locket in the car she used to drive to drop us off at the airport. I also brought some earrings, and I left it as a gift for her as well, telling her that she could keep them or throw them away or do whatever she wants with them. She thanked me for the earrings via text message, and later during the middle of the flight we were taking, I found her locket in my backpack, and I honestly don't know when she slipped her locket back in my bag. When we were standing outside the airport bidding goodbye, this friend only gave a handshake to my wife, but hugged me in front of my wife, even though she is not a hugger, and my wife strictly told her to never hug me. Once we separated from the friend, my wife and I decided to take a small break, as we were both overwhelmed. I texted this friend and I thanked her for the support that she gave me during our rough patch, and I also mentioned that I did like her as a person, but I never mentioned that I want her or anything like that in the message. But she then told my wife about this. Now, the thing that really surprised me was that she left out all the comments and remarks that she gave me when we were both completely alone, even her slipping the locket in my bag part, and told only my wife things that made me look like a complete jerk. Naturally, my wife was furious at me. It took my wife and I 4 hours for the whole talk that we had where we decided that we wanted to stay together. A few days after this happened, my wife called this friend to ask about the job opportunity this friend told her about in Copenhagen. This friend knew someone who could help my wife with a job opportunity over there. Before answering, this friend asked my wife about our relationship situation, and my wife told her that we worked things out. And almost immediately after hearing this, she started acting weird and saying that she doesn't think that the opportunity is available anymore. And she said this in a really non-friendly tone. After that, I broke all contact with this friend, but my wife still tried to keep in touch with her. But whenever my wife tried confronting the friend for the things that she said and did behind our backs, the friend refused to answer calls and would get irritated and say that all of this is a giant mistake and then just hang up the phone. It's now been more than 6 months since then, and my wife stopped texting her, and they haven't spoken since, even though they're still friends on Facebook and Instagram. I feel bad that I ruined their relationship, but my wife says it's not my fault because she is an adult and she made these choices consciously. And my wife also revealed that this friend of hers was always extremely competitive with her. I have already apologized to my wife for my faults and promised to never repeat that ever again. Do you think that this friend either liked me or wanted to break my wife's relationship up out of jealousy? It all seems so confusing, and I honestly am not sure what to believe. First off, the original poster was spending a little bit too much time with this friend behind his wife's back. Like, honestly, the way you were connecting with her and basically using her as some kind of sounding board against what your wife is or isn't doing, or whatever rough patch you may have been going through, personally was completely inappropriate. You guys had an emotional affair, like there's no other way around it, and you really should be counting your lucky stars that your wife even decided to stay with you, because what you just described is really inappropriate. But onto your question itself, yeah, she was definitely trying to break you guys up. Like, she very clearly did not want you two to be together in the slightest, and that's not fair for you guys at all, especially when you consider the fact that she very clearly is competitive with your wife. But all that pushed aside, none of this would have happened if you hadn't started making moves on this lady. Maybe I'm rude by saying this, so please correct me in the comment section if I am, but the problems that this original poster had faced because of this lady is literally his own fault. So I think moving forward, being loyal to your wife and choosing to stay with her and spend time with her and sort out the problems with just her really would take you a long way and could completely avoid this situation altogether, as well as possibly preserve your marriage with your wife. Today, I messed up by falling in love with someone that I know for a fact is never going to love me in return, and now I truly don't know what to do. I'm a 24-year-old female, and I'm a very nice person. I love deeply and I care deeply about people. Where I mess up is that I'm giving that deep energy to people who don't want to receive it. So I've had a crush on this guy for 2 years. I met him 2 years ago as a hookup type of guy because I was moving away soon. It sucked after because I just wanted him so badly. I've always had a crush on this guy since then. Fast forward to this year, and we started talking again more consistently in July. He wanted to meet me again, and then wanted to also spend some quality time together, if you know what I mean. He's 4 hours away from me, and he's in medical school, so his schedule is very tight with time. We had tried for a few months to align schedules, and it finally happened this weekend. My dilemma here, and why I know now that I shouldn't have went, is that I like him a lot. In my eyes, he's everything I want in a life partner. I've expressed that I liked him, and he says that he likes me, but he can't do anything like that because his medical residency starts later in 2023, and he knows it will take all of his time. He's very career focused, and that's his #1 priority, besides family and religion. Plus, with that residency, he will be moving further away from me. I also think he's afraid to be emotionally available because he doesn't want it to distract from his career. I thought at one point that I had truly accepted the fact that he doesn't want anything serious at this time in his life, so I thought I'd be able to handle seeing him in person this weekend. But the moment I saw him, my heart dropped because all of my strong feelings for him came back. I didn't realize just how much I missed being around him. He's so funny and cute, very intelligent, very well-rounded. The next day when he was at work at the hospital, I just started crying by myself because all my feelings came back so strongly, and I knew he wouldn't reciprocate that in the slightest. I tried to focus on having fun and living in the moment. We went to dinner and he paid for it. We were just talking all night and having a good time. I feel so at ease around him. The last morning, I dropped him off at the airport because he's flying to his hometown for the holidays. He kissed me goodbye and said, "I'll see you later. And when I drove home, I just cried so hard. I texted him that I was grateful to spend the weekend with him and thanked him for taking the time out of his schedule to have me over. I told him that I miss him way more than I realized after seeing him in person, but he never replied back. But he did send me some money for gas. I keep thinking about the what ifs. Does he see me as a potential partner for him in the future? Does he feel a connection like how I do? I keep wanting him to know how I feel, that I have the patience and support and the love that he might want and need. I want to be a rock for him. I want to be there for him through all of it. I do anything to make something work, but I know all of that is useless because he won't open up his heart and try. He says he's narrow-minded with it. I know I should have let him go when he told me that he didn't want anything serious. I should have moved on earlier. I should have listened to what he said and believed him when he said he doesn't want anything serious. It's like I can't stop thinking why. Why am I not good enough for him to try something with me? Why can't he see what I could give him? Why does he have to close himself up? Am I not pretty enough? Am I not good enough? I think I got hung up on all the small things. When he says he likes me, when he says he was so excited to see me, when he gave me a kiss goodbye and everything in between. It's all my fault though. I know I'm not obligated to get a text back, and I know I'm not obligated for him to open up to me or to tell me how he feels about me. It's all so very heartbreaking and confusing, and I don't know what to do. First off, I think you need to realize, in my opinion, that you just got played. This guy literally only brought you out so he could spend some quality time with you for a few days and then basically ghosted you. This guy's living a double life. He's spending quality time with you on the side while also professing that his family and his religion is some kind of priority. But I can guarantee you, if this is what he's doing on the side, those other two things that normally mean something to other people is probably just some big facade for this life he's living. And I think the sooner you realize that, the better. Also, this entire post, in my opinion, came off as very desperate. He really does not feel the same way towards you, and it's really unfortunate. He clearly just wanted a hookup, and it's obvious he's never gonna pick you over his career. And what's worse is you probably already know that. You probably know he's never gonna pick you over his career, but he still invited you anyways. And this just perpetuated this idea of, well, what's wrong with me? What did I do? Trust me, the problem's not with you. The problem's with this guy and his lack of morals and the fact that he's playing on your emotions. But you truly are giving yourself a disservice, as well as basically stifling any type of emotional growth by holding on to this fantasy that this guy's ever gonna bring you into his life. You can do so much better than this scumbag who only invited you over for some kind of hookup. So hopefully this works out for you in some kind of way, and you can find it in yourself to find another person who really will love you in the way that you want to be loved in return. My entitled son steals my dead wife's ring and uses it to propose to his toxic girlfriend. Things got so bad that I threatened to call the police and take him to court for breaking into my house and stealing a family heirloom. And as a result, his gold-digging fiance has left him, and he now blames me for all the misfortune in his life. And I honestly don't know what to do. Here's what happened. To say I was mad would be an understatement. I have a son by the name of Jake, and Jake was a good kid growing up, so him doing this was a complete shock to me. I have a daughter too by the name of Amber. When my wife passed away from COVID nearly 2 years ago, she already had a will in place. She was immunocompromised due to a prior condition that she was diagnosed with a decade before she passed away, and she made sure she had a will set up just in case anything happened to her. And in said will, she divided her assets between our children, and Jake got his cut as he was already 21. He used that money to put a down payment on a condo while also getting his mother's car in the process. But the will stated that my daughter was to get all of my wife's jewelry, and that included a vintage gold ring with a diamond on it that had a light blue sapphire on each side. That ring has been passed down for generations in my wife's family. It was even originally her grandmother's wedding band. Her grandfather's husband was a jeweler and handcrafted the ring for himself, and it was passed down to my wife's mother when her grandmother passed away, and then to my wife herself when her mother passed away. So it, along with all the other jewelry, was to all go to my daughter. This will be important later. When my wife passed away, my grief was intense, but I powered through it for the sake of my family, and they supported me 100%. So the betrayal from my son was just a rusty knife in the back for me. For the past 8 months, Jake has been dating a girl by the name of Sarah. She has my son wrapped around her finger, and she loves jewelry, as she adorns herself with it a lot. My son mentioned the family jewels my wife left his sister to Sarah one day, and Sarah really wanted to see them. So Jake went into my room when when no one was home and showed them to her. He later admitted to me that he had done this, and when I found out, I was absolutely angry. But right when I thought that would be the end of it, I was wrong. Jake then came to me a week ago and begged me for that ring from his mother's family jewels because he wanted to use it to propose to Sarah. He said Sarah had fallen in love with the ring when she saw it before, and he just thought it'd be the perfect ring to ask her to marry him with. He seemed completely convinced that I'd jump for joy for him wanting to propose, but instead, I told him that I was not the person to ask, as the ring belonged to Amber, and I wouldn't have him pressuring her to give it up either. For a fair chance, I'd allow him to explain his reasons and ask her for it once, but only once without pressuring her. And if she refuses for any reason, that would be the end of it. Jake agreed and asked Amber for the ring right in front of me, but she told him no, because she wanted to keep it in the family jewels and has always loved that ring. To her, it's completely priceless. She couldn't bear to ever give it up. I told Jake that was that, and not to press the matter any further. Jake left looking very unhappy about not getting the ring, but I thought he would let it go and look into finding a smaller one. But he came back another day while I was at work to talk to his sister after she got home from school. Jake and Amber then got into a huge fight about the ring, and Amber called me crying. So I called Jake and I told him to get out of my house and leave his sister alone. Jake yelled at me that he has just as much of a right to that ring as his sister does, because my wife was his mother too. But I reminded him that he got a lot of his mother's money and her car. The jewelry is Amber's and only hers. He then quickly hung up on me, and Amber later texted me saying that he left very angry. Later, right before I left for work, my daughter called and told me that Jake came back. He walked in dressed in a suit, went into my room and took something. Then he left without saying anything to Amber. She tried to keep him from leaving, but he shoved her out of the way. I rushed home as soon as my shift was over, and I checked my wife's jewelry box, and just as you would suspect, the ring was gone. I immediately called Jake, but he wouldn't answer his phone, so I messaged him, stating that I'll call the police if he doesn't return the ring. Using it to propose to Sarah won't stop me from taking it back. That eventually finally made him call me back, and he tried to say that I couldn't do that to him, simply because he's my son. I said I can and I will, because he outright stole the ring, and he'd better bring it back right away, or I would take drastic measures. Well, he phoned me right after that, and in a whisper, he said that it was too late. He had taken his girlfriend out to dinner and proposed to her with the ring. He didn't even have it for more than an hour by this point, and yet the ring was already on her finger. I said that was his problem. He stole the ring and he should bring it back. It is not his, and I will do whatever it takes to make sure it's returned. And if that means going to the police and blowing the whole situation up, then so be it. I will file a report. I'll even get a lawyer involved. At this point, Jake started crying and saying that I couldn't do this to him. I told him, tough luck. He stole from both his sister and his dead mother. I would not back down until that ring was returned. Jake wouldn't stop crying and making excuses, so I told him to have the ring back by morning, or I would be moving forward with legal action. Jake is my son, but he still broke the law, and I couldn't overlook what he had done. He said he'd be by in the morning to talk, and ended the call while crying even more. Well, Jake did show up in the morning and brought his girlfriend with him to try and guilt trip us. It turns out she not only knew he stole the ring, but she also wanted to keep it anyways. And this is because apparently she was completely in love with the ring since she first laid eyes on it. I told her I didn't care. She could have a jeweler make a copy of it or something like that, but the original doesn't belong to her. It belongs to my daughter and deceased wife. Jake begged me one more time to not make her give it back, but myself and my daughter stood firm. Return the ring or face the police, and maybe even a potential lawsuit. Jake's girlfriend pulled the ring off her finger and dropped it in my daughter's hand. They called me an evil jerk, then left my house in tears. Jake started screaming at me, stating that I may have just destroyed his relationship. I responded by saying that he did this to his own relationship by stealing a ring that didn't belong to him. What kind of son steals from his own sister and dead mother? That is honestly just terrible. Jake had nothing more to say to me and walked out to follow after his girlfriend. I didn't get anyone else involved in the situation, but Jake did. He tried getting support from friends and family, but he got the exact opposite reaction that he'd hoped for. They were all mad at him over what he had done. I got many phone calls and messages from people offering me condolences, saying that they were not on Jake's side. I tried to do damage control, but now everybody knows. It's been a week now and Jake refuses to speak to me. I've sent him detailed pictures of the ring, just in case he wanted a jeweler to replicate it, but making a copy would be a very expensive ordeal. That is, unless he uses some fake stones or something along the lines. And thus far, there has been no response. I don't know what the situation is with his girlfriend, and I don't even know if she even is still his girlfriend after what happened, but I still stand by the fact that Jake had to return the ring. I have since had all my wife's jewelry placed in a safety deposit box that only I have access to, and the jewelry will remain there until my daughter is 21 years old, and it may even stay there if she wants to keep it safe that way. I know I'm in the right to have reclaimed the ring, however, I don't want my son to hate me, and I don't want the family to hate me as well. The original poster actually gave us an update to further explain the aftermath of that situation. Here's what they had to say. Well, my son's girlfriend Sarah has officially broken up with him. He is devastated and blamed me entirely. Some previously pointed out that I gave him too much credit in saying that he was a good kid. He honestly used to be, but the person he is now, I just do not recognize. Whether he was always like this deep down, or if he just fell for the wrong person and let her change him for the worse is a mystery to me, but it doesn't justify what he did. After I forced him and Sarah to return the stolen ring, she apparently spent days crying on his bed, then told Jake that she didn't want a different ring, no matter how much he told her that he would get her another one. She was simply adamant that she wanted my deceased wife's ring, and she couldn't imagine possibly having a different one for their engagement now that it had already been on her hand, despite the fact that it had only been a few hours and it was stolen goods. The last time I met someone who cried that much about being made to return stolen property was when they were 4 years old. I heard more than one person say they thought Sarah was being a big baby about it. The situation was no secret because Jake spilled the beans, looking for support to the whole family, as well as Sarah's family and friends. As previous readers know, that backfired badly for them. Well, after Jake's failed gambit for support, all the local drama lovers latched onto the situation like barnacles on a boat, and they kept messaging me with more information, even though I wasn't asking. So I was being kept in the loop, even though Jake and Sarah weren't talking to me. My son had the pictures I sent him so that he could try and replicate the ring, and took them to a jeweler. The jeweler said he could make a similar ring based on the pictures, but he'd want to closely examine the original to take proper measurements and to make an evaluation of the stones and metal in order to see what it take to make it as close of a copy as possible. Jake waited for a while until finally swallowing his pride to call me again. His girlfriend was finally at least entertaining the idea of making a copy, but she wanted it to be an exact copy, down to the smallest detail. They called me after a couple of days and asked me to bring the ring to a jeweler to get a proper quote on the cost of making a duplicate. I agreed to an extended lunch break and went to the local jeweler. I got the ring from the safety deposit box and I guarded it closely. I could see Sarah's eyes light up with greed the moment she saw it again. She reached her hand out and asked to wear it just one more time, then pouted like a child when I told her no. For all I know, she could have taken off running the second she had it. The jeweler looked at the ring very closely for a while and said it was worth more than we thought, and that if they wanted a copy of it, it would cost a lot of money. The ring was decades old and expertly crafted by my wife's grandfather sometime in the 1940s. The jeweler was singing its praises. The diamond and sapphires were decently large for an engagement ring, and the ring itself didn't use a slim gold band, but a pretty thick and heavy one, made of what was estimated to be 18 carats of gold. But there was more. The stones themselves were set in platinum, and the ring had many ornate floral carvings on it. The stones alone to make an identical ring was more than Jake's current budget, and not including antique value, making a copy of a ring just like that with that much variety of materials would cost a lot of time and labor because every part of it would have to be handcrafted. It was 5 times what Jake had saved up. The best he could have done would be to make some kind of down payment and then spend years in debt just to have the ring. Sarah enthusiastically wanted Jake to have the ring made anyways, but the cost was just too much, so the jeweler suggested they have one made that looks just the same. It didn't need to be an exact copy of the same materials. They could use a center stone that looked just similar to a diamond and replace the platinum with a similar metal, but it would have to be at a reduced cost by a lot. There was also a suggestion of looking for a modern ring that looks very similar to what's already been made, which would be far cheaper as well. In fact, the jeweler already had 3 rings set aside that all look somewhat similar with a central diamond and sapphires, and they were all reasonably priced. Jake was all in for the idea, but Sarah suddenly slapped him, calling him a cheap wannabe. She then turned on her heel heels and called me an evil jerk again for taking the original ring back because it had already been given to her when Jake proposed, and it should still be hers regardless. Then she held up her hand in the manner one does when they expect you to put a ring on their finger and outright demanded the ring back while saying it was her right to wear it and that my daughter wouldn't need it because it would go to waste with her. She actually said it's not like my daughter would be doing the proposing to anyone since a man could just get a different ring for her someday. And when she said that, oh boy did that make me angry. And she clearly noticed how angry I was because she took a couple of steps backwards. I looked her dead in the eye and said that my wife's family ring will never be hers. It wasn't Jake's to give away and he knew it. That's why he went out of his way to steal it while I wasn't home because he hoped I wouldn't demand it back if he used it, but neither he nor she had any right to it. Then I said that it's entitled people like her that are what's wrong with the world now. She acts like whatever she wants should just be handed to her, and she's lusted after my wife's ring ever since Jake first showed it to her. That whole speech was a bit long-winded with some conjecture, I know, but I just couldn't hold myself back verbally anymore. My wife used to tell me that if I wanted to insult someone, I always figured out exactly what to say. After I said all of that to Sarah's face, she aimed to slap me too, but I guess the look in my eyes was enough to make her turn away and storm out instead, while very loudly making some sort of intelligible tantrum noises that hurt my ears. She even intentionally knocked down a counter display on her way out. Jake was glaring at me with absolute rage, but didn't say anything until I asked him why he was with such an awful woman, but he just said that he loved her and followed after. To his credit, she is very beautiful, but it's really just skin deep. Sarah wouldn't talk to Jake for a while, and then a few days later told him that they were through because she felt like he didn't value her enough to get her the ring that she deserved, and that she couldn't imagine having me as a father-in-law. She said she felt thoroughly humiliated by me and cried that people all think she's a gold digger now. But honestly, I don't think they are wrong. I mean, she slapped my son just for suggesting that they make a cheaper version of an expensive ring that he could not afford, then threw a massive tantrum just because I wouldn't hand over the original when she demanded it. That's the behavior of a gold digger if I have ever seen any. And while it is an assumption on my part, exactly how long would Sarah have stayed with my son if someone rich came along and swept her off her feet? Would she have been inclined to still stand by him? Something tells me not so. I honestly feel like she just wanted the ring and nothing else. Right after the incident with the breakup, Jake did try to get into the house again while I wasn't home. To do what exactly, I have no idea, but if I were to speculate, he may have been after the cash I kept in my safe, or thought that the family jewels were still in the house. I hadn't told him at that point that I had them stored in a safety deposit box, and I didn't really want to think my own son would break in for either of those reasons. But he stole from us once, and he could do it again. It was suggested that I should probably change the locks on my house, so I ended up doing just that. So now Jake's key no longer works, and I'm even looking to get cameras set up in my house as well. My daughter Amber called me after Jake showed up and said that she was terrified while he was banging on the front door, demanding to be let in. I called his cell and he didn't pick up, but I guess it spooked him because Amber said he left right after his phone started ringing. He has a very specific ringtone for me, so he knew it was me calling in an instant. Jake later called that evening, but before he could start yelling at me, I demanded to know what in the world he was doing trying to break into my house while I wasn't home. He scared his sister and she nearly called the police. Jake dodged the question by being angry about me changing the locks, stating that I don't trust him. And I said, you know what? I don't trust you, especially not after what he's done. Jake then fired back, saying that I couldn't just be happy for him, and that if his mom was still alive, she would have wanted him to use that ring to propose. At this point, I saw red, and I said that if she wanted that, she would have put that in the will. So he began to whine and say that it was all my fault. He explained exactly what Sarah said when she broke up with him, and how she called me a horrible person, among other things. Then ranted about how I always thought Sarah was never good enough for him, but I never said she wasn't good enough for him. I barely knew Sarah to begin with, and I never once got in the way of him being with her until he stole the ring. He tried to deny that, but I asked him when I'd ever had anything bad to say about Sarah prior to the ring incident. He really sounded like he was trying to think hard, but even he couldn't remember any actual time because I barely saw this woman ever while they were dating. I wasn't even aware they were dating until at least 3 months had gone by in their relationship. But that was all besides the point. Why on earth was he trying to get into my house? house. And when I asked him again, he refused to answer. So I answered for him. I said if he was after the ring or any of my family jewels, they have been moved to a safe, secure location that only I have access to. And if he was trying to break into my safe for my emergency cash fund, there's no way he would ever get it open. At this point, I may have hit the nail on the head with at least a few of those things, because Jake just had a long silent pause on the line. Then he told me that he's made up his mind to put in for a transfer at his job and sell his condo. He wants to move as far away as possible and never speak to me again. His last words to me were to have a nice life with my favorite child. I don't understand how my son was so completely changed on this level in just a year. I never actually called Sarah a manipulative gold digger until recently. I said she had my son wrapped around her finger and she loves jewelry, though I guess that's not all that different in the long run. But in truth, she is very manipulative, and she definitely is a gold digger, especially after the drama that she put on to try and keep a ring that was never hers. I mean, she spent days crying in bed over a ring that she knew was stolen, and then had her huge tantrum at not being able to get it back or a copy of it. And now, because of her, my son has chosen to wash his hands of me and his sister altogether. I am honestly devastated, but at the same time, I'm furious that my son would do such things just to appease this witch of a woman he'd only been dating for about 8 months. That's not enough time dating before proposing. I dated my wife for over 2 years before popping the question. I shudder to think what things would have been like if that witch had actually married my son. I know Jake is going to blame me for a long time, and I'm not sure if I'll ever speak to him again, but I hope one day we can reconcile. But for now, I think we just need some time apart. Amber is also very upset. She's extremely thankful that I got the ring back for her, but she is just as shocked as I was that Jake has become like he is now. And she's referring to him as a brute for how he shoved her aside when he stole the ring. Thankfully, she has a great support system with me and the rest of the family, which is something I know Jake doesn't have right now. Multiple family members have called or messaged him just to tell him off, and his now former best friend even came to me to apologize. He and Jake got into a nasty fight over what he had done, and when his own best friend since elementary school didn't see things from his side, Jake just cut him off as well. Jake's ex-girlfriend Sarah also got in trouble with her own family. Her parents contacted me to ask for my side of the story and then apologized for their daughter's behavior. They only knew a small bit of what happened, but they were appalled to hear about the way she acted. Like Jake, they said she used to be a much kinder person, but in the past few years she's changed so much. They are severely disappointed in her, especially after everything they've done to help her out. I can only hope that one day my son comes to his senses and finds happiness again. Whether or not he ever chooses to speak to me again is honestly up to him, but until then, I'll hold out hope that he'll one day return to being the kind person that he once was. That was a roller coaster of a story. There's so much to unpack here, but first and foremost, the original poster is not the jerk in this situation. Their son literally stole from them in a very serious way, a family heirloom that's absolutely irreplaceable, and they did everything correctly in my opinion. Jake in this story is unbelievably entitled, not to mention his crazy girlfriend. I mean, I'm with the original poster here. That lady was probably going to get that ring and then dip. There was no way she was going to stay with Jake in the first place. She probably would have just put that ring on her finger and then cut town, because based on what we've been told, it really seems like she's that kind of person. So good for the original poster for putting his foot down and retaining the ring that means so much to his family. And hopefully, for the sake of the original poster, him and Jake are able to make amends. But I think either way, the original poster hasn't done anything wrong, and all of the blame squarely lands on Jake's shoulders. An entitled old man forces me to get up from the disabled seating, claiming that my knee injury was not good enough of a reason for me to stay where he clearly wants to sit. And I've honestly never been more upset in my life. Here's what happened. So I have a bad knee, and we can't figure out what is wrong with it. It's not a big deal because most days it's just a bit achy, but sometimes it gets so bad that I cannot put any weight on it while it's bent. If I do, I will fall or probably make it worse. Those are rare days, but today was one of those days where I was basically limping with a knee brace. Lucky me, am I right? I was in pain, but I really needed to get my medication as well as my mother's medication from the pharmacy. She's just recovering from a major surgery that leaves her shoulder temporarily paralyzed, and I cannot drive yet, so I had to take the bus. The thing is that we live in a very rural village halfway up the mountain. There is no police station. There is literally no chain businesses, nothing like Walmart or stuff like that. There's a couple of gas stations, but there's not even a doctor doctor's office. They are working on a building with a walk-in clinic and a pharmacy, thank God. But in the meantime, all of those things are a highway away. It's been a blizzard yesterday and the whole night, so the roads and everything is covered in a good blanket of snow. But the weather itself today wasn't as bad, it was just cold. To make everything even worse, the buses only come down to my village once every 2 hours, and the connecting buses in the main city don't match up. So what would be a 30-minute trip to the pharmacy is now a 4-hour outing. So I'm in pain and it's cold, and I know I'm going to be wandering around Walmart aimlessly for at least 3 hours, but I'm willing to endure it because my mom really needs these meds, and I can't cope well without my own meds either. But it's not all bad because while I'm waiting, I can look for some Pokemon card deals or something like that. So finally, I get my medications, and I ended up buying some Pokemon cards for myself. And lo and behold, I was pleasantly surprised when a bus pulls up at the bus stop almost right away. My bus isn't this one, but I heard from my friends that this number has an end destination of my village and just goes the long way around. So I confirmed it with the driver and I got on, thinking I just won the lottery. I knew the route was bumpy, but I would be able to just sit for an hour and just relax until I could get home, check on my mom, and then open up my Pokemon cards. So I got on this bus and I sit down in the front row, which is reserved for physically disabled people. I really hate doing this, but my knee was getting the worst it's ever been from walking around, and I honestly didn't trust it to take me the few steps to the regular seating. I figured it wouldn't be a big deal, as this bus is usually very empty. Another nice lady in a wheelchair comes in and gets situated, which made me feel a bit uneasy, but I just shrugged it off. These buses are not designed in the best way as to fit a wheelchair in the proper space they have to flip up a whole section of seating. After a few stops, the bus is actually quite full for some reason, and I felt a bit stupid sitting there with my Pokemon box. But I'm only about 40 minutes from my village, so it's no big deal. An older gentleman comes onto the bus, and immediately he stares at me. I'm a bit of a meek person, so I avert my eyes immediately. I only look up when he clears his throat. He's glaring right down at me now. I try to subtly stretch my leg with the knee brace out to show him that I'm actually sitting here for a reason without actually engaging with him, because I really hate confrontation. He barely looks at it before he makes eye contact with me again. The old man looks at me and says, "Could you move?" I look at him and I say, "I'm really sorry, but I've been walking around all day." And before I could even continue to explain what's going on with my knee, he chimes in and says, Yeah, I've been walking all day as well. I think a young woman like you could stand a bit longer." I look at him and I say, "I've got a bit of a knee issue. It's pretty bad right now. And right about now, I wanted to shrink up into nothing, as I hate having attention and I hate taking up space." He looks at me and says, "Look, kid, just move. Wearing a knee brace doesn't mean that you get to take this seat from the elderly like me who need it." I wish I could say that I stood up for myself and that the other passengers backed me up, but really I just stood up and scurried into the corner by the door to try and shrink away. Thankfully, most of the other people pretended not to notice the exchange, and the old man didn't talk to me again after that. The bumpy ride was absolutely terrible the entire way home. When it comes to the old man, I don't completely fault him because I take the bus often, and when I'm not temporarily disabled, I'm always standing or sitting in the regular seats if I can. Maybe he's seen me do this before and that's what's fueled his skepticism. I'm not really sure, but either way, it was a painful ride home, and I did end up getting some kind of Pokemon card that I liked, so I guess that's kind of a silver lining. That really sucks that the old man decided that you need to move. It makes me question whether or not there are even seats available that he could have taken, because it sounds like he was being the typical weird entitled person who just likes to claim everything in front of them as if it's theirs, and that's truly unfair for you. So I'm really sorry that this happened, and hopefully the next time you ride the bus and you have to sit in those seats because of your knee, that guy isn't there to try and ruin the party. And maybe next time just tell that guy to get lost. I mean, you don't have to move if you don't want to. You yourself know that you need that seat, and he's not about to put his hands on you to try and throw you out of the seat. So hopefully next time you can just ride the bus in peace, and hopefully you never get treated like that ever again. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. I rejected my creepy coworker, stating to him that I would much rather be friends than go on a date, and now as a result, he has gotten progressively more weird, creepy, and incredibly rude. And despite reporting him to HR, he still has a job, and he still stalks me and does these really creepy things, and I honestly don't know what to do. So basically, I knew this guy in college. He always liked me, and the most I ever agreed to was to go out to coffee, which didn't even happen. We were okay friends, we spoke there and then, and sometimes we would play video games together. together. But I let him know that I wasn't interested in a relationship. Anyways, I plan to apply to this job I'm working at a while ago, before I even ended my program. I apply and I find out that this guy works there, which is fine for the most part. I messaged him and I told him that I'm applying, and he said, "Oh, that's cool." Eventually, I did get hired, and unfortunately, this is when he starts getting weird. He asked me out again and I rejected him, and I said that I would rather just be friends and all that good stuff. He then takes this horrendously. He was so convinced that we were going to be together, despite the fact that he barely knows me. I let him down as nice as I could, I swear. He's now gotten progressively worse. He spam messages me on all my social media, and I can deal with that for the most part. But then he started to add some of my friends on social media just to ask them about me. I said, "Please don't do that." And he says, "Oh, so I'm not allowed to make friends?" But at the end of the day, he doesn't even know the people that he's adding. He's only adding them so he can get more information about me. He also hacked my Teams application at work. Well, not really hacked, as he has an administrative access, but he went through all my messages and saw my manager speaking to me about the situation, and that's when he went off. The best part about it is that my manager only knows about the situation because this guy messaged her in a drunk rant about me. He has shown up to my house twice on 2 separate occasions and honked the horn like 100 times, each at about midnight. On these days, he can honestly probably spam call me about 200 times as well. He rage messaged me on our work teams, stalked me on my other social medias, and I had to block him on pretty much everything. He constantly rants about me on the Teams application and complains about me to our manager. She knows he's been stalking me too. And you know what? HR knows as well. And I don't want him to get fired, but I mean, what do I do? I've told them pretty much everything, except him showing up to my house. I'm saving that for if this escalates even further. He keeps making rude comments to me through the day about my work. I ask him to please stop, but he just gets worse. Here's the thing, I don't make any mistakes, but when I do, he literally spams me on my Teams app up until I open the message and makes sure to let me know that I did something wrong, and I've only been here like 2 months. He will literally make verbally aggressive side comments, knowing that I can hear him. I've explained to him that we're both adults, and this middle school behavior needs to stop, but he just denies doing anything. He literally acts like a child. For example, he messaged me on Friday asking if I was going to the work Christmas party, and follows it up with, "If you're going, I'm not. I don't want anything to do with you inside or out of work." He deletes all his messages, so it just looks like I'm talking to myself too. It's honestly so unneeded. He will also just spam react to my messages and send the period punctuation over and over until I open his messages. And this is during work hours, mind you. If I don't reply, he has a hissy fit and threatens to talk to one of the managers about me. He will also walk past my desk about 20 times a day. He tries to see what I'm doing, and it annoys me so badly. He works to the other side of me and will literally walk all the way around to use the bathroom near me just to try and see what I'm doing. Once, I literally turned around and I saw him moving his head in a way to get a better look at my phone, despite the fact that I was on a lunch break. What more can I do? I'm extremely shy, so it's hard for me to stand up for myself, and he knows this. The verbal comments throughout the day and the spam messages are making me extremely anxious and uncomfortable. What should I do? I'm honestly surprised you have not gotten the police involved. If someone is showing up to my house and basically harassing me outside of work, then that's enough for me to be like, okay, I'm getting the cops involved. I'm gonna call the cops and say this guy is harassing me. It's also insane to me that he has not been fired yet. This is the definition of workplace harassment. This guy is going out of his way to bother you and to basically stalk you at work. And the fact that HR hasn't done anything about it is absolutely insane. I mean, are they asking for some kind of lawsuit against them? Because literally this is what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to mitigate situations like this, because this one especially sounds really creepy. Here's the thing, it starts out with creepy text messages, as well as messages at work, as well as him basically obsessing over you all the time, and then it leads to something a lot more dangerous that can put your life in danger. So if I were you, I would start documenting everything that he's saying and present this to HR every time it happens, and I would get the police involved. I would say, this guy is harassing me and stalking me, and I don't know what to do in this situation, and I need help. I would also, if I was in your shoes, probably talk to an attorney. I mean, this is seriously crazy and creepy behavior, and I'm sure you're a nice person and you're shy, but you know what? It's just not worth your safety to try and be nice to this guy. He is a stalker, and this behavior is super dangerous. So you can report him to HR again and see if they can do anything about this, but if nothing is done inside the company about about this, then getting the police involved and showing them exactly how this guy's acting might be your next best bet. And by the way, you've only worked there for 2 months, so quitting is definitely always an option. So whatever you decide to do, it's time to take some kind of action, because this is seriously scary behavior and it's not something that I would take lightly. This next story is an update to a previous story we covered on the channel. In this story, the father had to deal with his son by the name of Jake, who stole the ring of his dead mother and tried to use it to propose to his now ex-girlfriend. Terrible things went down, the ring was eventually returned to the father, and Jake separated from his father and said that he would never talk to him again. Here's what the original poster had to say as an update. I was hoping for no more drama or anything of the like, but it just didn't stop. Yes, Jake sold his condo. For how much, I honestly don't know, but he probably made a profit flipping it. And last Saturday, he pretty much just took whatever he could fit into his car and left. As a side note, Jake had been saying he was going to do this for a while, just to try and get away from me, claiming that I basically had ruined his life. From what I know, the last few weeks have been hectic for my son. People all over town know exactly what he did, because the gossip train never stopped. At one point, Jake nearly got into a fight with a man at a bar, because this guy called him out in front of everyone there. I tried to take the initiative by going to see him one last time. I hope that maybe we could talk things out and make amends before he left town, because at this point, I'd realized his moving away was the best thing he could do for himself. He had already destroyed his own reputation, and he's better off starting over somewhere else. But when I got there and knocked on his door, he refused to open it. I tried to say I only wanted to talk, and he told me through the door that there was nothing to talk about, other than the fact that I ruined his life. There was a bit of a pause, where he was only speaking intermittently. Then he suddenly went on a rant about the ring, and how I should have just let Sarah keep it. Then went on to say that I should have also offered to help pay for the copy, but it didn't matter anymore. Sarah was confirmed crazy, and they are through for good, just like he's through with me and his sister. After he said that got me angry, and I retorted that what he did was unacceptable. He assaulted his sister while stealing that ring from my house, for crying out loud, and he's honestly pretty lucky that he didn't get arrested for that. And literally, everyone who knew what he did was against him. That's the kind of red flag that shows you are in the wrong on a citywide scale. Then I told him to drop the act that he's been putting up for the sake of his pride. I said that I don't know if he rushed things with Sarah because he missed his mother, or because he's now at the age that I was when he was born, or whatever other reason he could have. But the fact still remains that he knew what he did was wrong, and he just won't admit it. And I'm tired of trying to stick up for him. I didn't escalate the situation for anyone. He and Sarah did that themselves. I'm tired of being blamed for his own wrongdoings. That's the sort of thing narcissists and cowards do. His mother and I raised him better than that, and he should know that his mother would not have approved of his actions. But she's not here to say it. It doesn't matter who you are. If you steal something that's not yours, you can't then go blaming the person you stole it from for being mad about it and doing whatever they have to do in order to get it back. There was then a silent pause on Jake's end for a few seconds, and then he just said, "Screw you, Dad." After he said that, I could hear him crying and hitting things inside, and that's when I noticed down the hall that one of Jake's neighbors was poking her head out the door, and she went back inside the moment I looked at her. So I knew right then and there that this is going to end up back on the gossip train. Jake refused to say anything more to me, so I just left. But when I was leaving the building, a police car pulled up right in front of the condo building. 2 officers got out of the car and asked my name. When I told them who I was, they said that they had been called by someone in the building saying I was trying to break into their apartment. I said I had an argument with my son through his door, but I didn't once try to force my way in, and I only touched the door to try and knock on it. I told the whole story of what happened, and then pointed out which neighbor had been watching and listening, and that the building had CCTV. One of the officers went up to talk to the neighbor, while the other detained me in handcuffs. He was very polite and said that the handcuffs were just to make sure, since they don't know who's telling the truth. I said he's just doing his job, and he let me sit on the bench nearby while we waited. The officer who went in the building called on the walkie-talkie after about 10 to 15 minutes of waiting. I'm not sure since I couldn't look at my watch, but he said that the neighbor's story more or less matched up with mine, and there was apparently more than one neighbor who was listening in who corroborated the same story. He then said he was going to talk to the building security and check the CCTV for that hallway. This took a fair bit longer, and again, I couldn't look at my watch. I just sat waiting on a bench near the entrance. But the kind officer pulled up a radio app on his cell phone and let me listen to it for a while to pass the time. The other officer finally came back on the walkie-talkie and told his partner to uncuff me because the CCTV had cleared me. He said that while the audio wasn't great, you could see and hear enough to show that I never once tried to force my way in. I was uncuffed, and after the other officer got back, the two of them briefly spoke to each other for a moment. Then, he actually asked me if I was the guy whose son stole his dead mother's ring. I confirmed that I am, and I asked him how did they know? They then said that they both heard about it through the grapevine, and after hearing my version of events, they put 2 and 2 together. One of them said he was in the office the day Sarah was arrested. Apparently, she was acting like a wild animal and was trying to bite at them, and she made several threats stating, "Do you know who my parents are?" as well as other horrible things. Eventually, the officer just told me to go home, and that I was probably better off not coming back. I nodded in agreement and I just left. I saw the police go back into the building as I was leaving, most likely to talk to Jake. I know it was him who called the police because his neighbors messaged me later on social media saying that the officers gave him a solid chewing out for wasting police time to the point where he was crying again. And I guess they also pointed out the ring incident and said that what he did was pretty low. I'm not sure how Jake handled that, but it sounds like he heavily embellished what was going on when he called the police. And from the time I first arrived to when the police got there, he had to have called them right around when we started talking through the door. He's beyond lucky that they didn't arrest him for calling them under false pretenses. I went home and I was comforted by my daughter Amber, and she told me I tried, and it's not my fault Jake has gone bad, but it still hurt. I may have lost my son permanently. I ended up just taking the day off of work and locking myself in the office to play some video games, just to try and unwind. My son left town over the weekend, and I may never see him again, but if I do, I hope he understands that I will always care about him. Yes, he wronged me, but I'm still his father. He could come to my door tomorrow wanting to talk, and I would let him in. I just hope that day doesn't take 10 or 20 years, but rather I hope it comes sooner. What a terrible situation all the way around, because you're right, your son literally did this to himself, and he's too prideful to admit that he was in the wrong, and that's really unfortunate, because I really think a lot of his problems could probably be sorted out if he simply said I'm sorry and tried to make amends. Instead, he's just doubling down because he's being prideful, and that's not fair for anybody involved, especially when you consider how much damage he caused not only to his family's name, but also to his own reputation. I mean, he basically threw his family under the bus and disowned his father in a way that's so inappropriate, and it all stems back to this decision to break into this guy's house and steal something that definitely wasn't his. I think if there was better communication involved, this all could have been avoided altogether. But instead, he's basically stuck between a rock and a hard place, and now he has to cut town just to try and have some kind of life again, which really sucks for him. But he did do this to himself. He stole this ring to try and use it to propose to his girlfriend, who most definitely would have taken it and run. And if that happened, that would have been absolutely tragic for everybody in the family, especially when you consider that this is the original poster's wife's ring, and this ring has been in her family for such a long time. What a waste to have that thrown down the drain, all because of the selfishness of this original poster's son. I mean, honestly, I think moving really would be the best option for him. He definitely ruined his reputation in that town. But even then, people have messed up bigger in other situations, and they're still able to make it work in the town that they live in. But I think the key ingredient here is humility, and it sounds like the original poster's son doesn't have any in his body. So I hope the original poster is able to get through this situation just fine, because they literally did everything they could to reach out to their son. But it's just unfortunate that they have decided to go in a different direction, despite your best efforts to try and make amends. An entitled Karen freaks out at me and threatens to sue me because I got her online order wrong for the grocery store I work at. And just as I'm trying to clock out for the day, she actually puts her hands on me and stops me from leaving the building, screaming at me that she's going to get me fired. And as a result, she got banned from my store, and I honestly am blown away by the way she acted. Here's what happened. So first, some context. I'm an 18-year-old male, and I work as a personal shopper at Safeway. If you don't know what that means, have you ever placed an order online? I'm the dude that goes around the store and fills it. It's an alright job, though every now and then, I have to deal with some crazy parent who has decided that I am personally at fault for everything bad to ever happen in their lives. And this family happened to have two of those types of people. A couple of weeks ago, I was filling someone's order as I usually do, and everything was going fine. It was a Thursday, meaning it got pretty slow around the afternoon. There was this one specialty artisan bread that the lady had ordered, which we had in stock, but for some reason it didn't scan properly. Stuff like this happens all the time. When that does happen, we substitute it in and move move on to the next item. The problem was that this lady had selected no substitution in the app, which basically meant I had to override that in order to give her the bread that she wanted. Normally, we're not supposed to override the no sub rule if the customer specifies so. However, we have to make exceptions for code issues between the departments. If something doesn't scan properly, we just substitute it in for itself, if that makes sense. Either way, she was going to get the bread that she wanted at the same price, and all was supposed to be well. That is until about 30 minutes later, when I get a call on the store phone. I answer with my typical customer service greeting voice. "Thank you for calling Safeway. This is the original poster. How can I help you?" And this entitled Karen just goes absolutely nuts on me. She is full on screaming at me over the phone. She's saying, "I asked for no substitutions. Why did you substitute the bread, you idiot? I clearly specified do not substitute and you ignored it." And she just went on and on and on. When she was finally done shouting, I explained the whole situation to her, that the bakery used a barcode that didn't work, so I had to substitute it in to give her the bread. She would still be getting the bread she wanted at the price she would have normally paid. I've had to deal with similar situations a bunch, and normally they just say they understand and hang up, and it usually ends there. But in this case, she was not having it. She says, "I don't care. You still substituted it in, and I asked for no substitutions." So I explain it again to her, and guess what? She's still infuriated. She screams, "Let me talk to your manager. You clearly can't do your job. I want to talk to a manager right now." She then started screaming, "I'm a single mom with an autistic son. I can't come to the store and shop for myself, so I expect my orders not to be messed up like this. Is that too much to ask?" Now, as a side note, I understand the part about having an autistic son, by the way. I know that autism is different for everybody, but I have an autistic brother who needs to be watched by someone all the time, or else he'll do something very expensive, like breaking something or something along those lines. For example, last time he was left alone, I came back to a power outage, and that's all to say that yes, I know where this lady is coming from. It was like the more she spoke, the angrier she got. Before long, she was full on cussing me out and threatening me. Once she was done, she asked to talk to the manager for the 6th time. So I just say, okay, and I transfer her over to the manager. Not even a minute later, I see him come to me out of the office. According to him, she just said I should be fired and then immediately hung up. He asked me what I could have possibly said to make her so mad, and I explained the whole situation to him. Very rarely am I ever actually mad, and I'm never rude to people at work, so he totally believed me. He tells me to just go about my business while he figures out what he should do about the bread. And honestly, shout out to this guy. He is genuinely one of my favorite people. About 15 minutes later, and 15 minutes away from the end of my shift, I'm overall feeling pretty good. All the remaining orders for the day have been filled, and now I'm just waiting for them to be picked up or delivered. I'm signing out of the computer when a woman approaches me and grabs my shoulder. Now, I get there's no way she could have known this, but I hate being touched, so this was already kind of off-putting. I ask her how I can help her, and she asks me for my name. I tell her my name, and then she turns red with rage. It was at this moment that I realized it was the entitled Karen on the phone. She then starts screaming at me, so loud it drew the attention of pretty much everyone in the store. I was less worried about what she was saying, even though she was threatening violence and apparently legal action for some reason, but rather I was more so worried about how this looked to people around me. I'm a 6'5" lanky dude with a mustache, and I'm currently being shouted at by a short blonde lady threatening to sue me. The manager eventually gets involved, and he separates us. She goes up to the manager, demanding that I be fired for messing up her order, but instead he just asked her to get out. I wouldn't find out about this much later, but apparently at my store, touching an employee without their consent can get you banned. As far as I'm aware, the situation ended once she left the doors, though I later realized that if she had an autistic son that she couldn't leave unattended, why was she able to come to the store just to shout at me? I wouldn't be surprised if she really was just that neglectful. I'm not accusing her of lying by any means, but it did seem odd that her main reason for not being able to come to the store didn't matter anymore when she came to the store just to shout at someone and just to get herself banned. Either way, this entitled crazy Karen will never be a problem for me ever again. Talk about the biggest overreaction the world's ever seen. I mean, this lady's freaking out over bread. Like, what is going on? Like, it's one thing to be annoyed that a store changes things around, or maybe something gets swapped around, like, okay, whatever. But this lady was literally threatening violence, as well as a lawsuit against this poor hourly worker who is just trying to get their job done and go home. I mean, how crazy crazy do you have to be to act like that? And worst of all, she was still going to get the bread that she wanted to. She's clearly an idiot and she just did not know what she was talking about. So hopefully for the sake of this original poster, this lady never comes back again because she's clearly unhinged and she most likely has been lying about her autistic son. I'll just go ahead and say it for the original poster. Karens like this definitely like to make up stuff just to try and get on the pity side. That way they can try and have some kind of weird emotional manipulation over you. So maybe next time if she wants to get her order correct at a grocery store, she should just go in and get it herself instead of screaming at some employee who's clearly just trying to do the best they can. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for wanting my sister to go to the doctor's office and get some medical care, all based on the way she's acting? Before I start, I would like to say that my parents aren't the best at scheduling medical help. For example, I had to get my friend's mom to reform my toenail as it was ingrown for 7 months, and they kept forgetting to put me on medication. Also, the reason that happened is that I have a birth defect where I had extra bones in one foot. Instead of buying meds for my toe, they were scared there wouldn't be enough acne medications. Now with that backstory out of the way, I'm 16 years old and I just finished school for the year. My sister is 10 years old and is too lazy to go anywhere vital and would prefer to go to an amusement park instead of to the doctor. Lately, my sister has been having a horrible cough, and it's one of those you know burns your throat and are just horrible to have. She's barely been eating anything, a bite of a waffle or a bowl of fruit at best. I know it's still COVID time, but it's been well over a month. This is now a medical problem. She also has some mental problems that she is currently dealing with. If someone is to eat something in my family, she will scream at them, saying that they are being rude and disrespectful as it hurts her ears. Even if it's a drink, she yells loudly. My nanny has even said that she yells at her. I once came home at 10 o'clock at night from a volleyball tournament, and I hadn't had lunch because I had no money, and I had a piece of dried mango the entire time, and I just wanted dinner. Our living room and kitchen are basically one room too, by the way. My mom, my sister, and I are in these two rooms, and I made a pesto pasta and started eating at the kitchen table. My sister then yells from the couch in our living room, "Shut up, you're disgusting for eating that green gunk. Go stand in the pantry if you want to eat." My mom turns around and tells my sister that she can't hear me and that I'm closer to her than my sister, who's about 10 meters away. My sister then walks up to me, snatches away my food, and throws it out. "That will make you shut up." I couldn't move, nor could my mom. My sister just goes back to her iPad on the couch and stays there. This habit of hers started about 4 months ago, only happening rarely and quietly, but now it's every night or so. Also, to back this up, my mom sometimes talks and eats simultaneously. I never do this, and if I'm asked a question, I wait to finish chewing. My dad doesn't eat dinner with us because his schedule is so chaotic, but if we all go out, he's incredibly quiet. My nanny is big on table manners and has never eaten with her mouth open. She defended me during my sister's little rampages. My sister repeated this behavior so many times, even to our nanny who's 70 years old, to the point where both my nanny and I had to get my mom and start saying that she needs to go to a doctor. We had lists of reasons why that needs to happen. My nanny even told us about her friend's niece who refuses to eat in public or with others because of the sound of chewing. My mom looked at them and said, "But she doesn't really want to go. Don't worry, it's just a phase, she'll get through it," and then walked away. We have since brought this up several times because it's getting on my nanny's nerves. Honestly, it's getting on all of our nerves, and we just want her to go to the doctor, which she still won't do, and my mom won't schedule it for some reason. If you're asking why I can't schedule the appointment, I'm not a legal guardian, and I don't have enough accessible money to pay for an appointment. My nanny can't schedule it because she as well isn't a legal guardian and doesn't have her Medicare card. My parents have enough money to go to the doctor, and my mom has designer bags for crying out loud. Now, my sister has found out that we want to send her to a doctor, and she's just super angry with us. She yells at us that she's fine, but she's not, as she still complains 24/7. She still has a nasty cough, and she won't go to a doctor or get medical help. Of course, I can't tell if she just wants attention, but she can't keep this act up for long. I need my mom to get the doctor's appointment, but she doesn't want my sister uncomfortable with someone asking her questions. So it begs the question, am I the jerk for telling my mom that my sister needs to go to the doctors? Because at this point, I'm honestly not sure. I don't think you're a jerk in this situation. First off, the way that your sister is acting is super inappropriate, and it's crazy that your mom is letting this behavior just slip on by. She literally took the food out of your hands and threw it in the trash can, and then went right back to her iPad as if nothing happened. This weird controlling behavior needs to be stopped like right away. And she's had a cough for like a month. It sounds like your mom's being very neglectful, and that's not fair for anybody involved, especially your little sister. So honestly, some intervention of some kind might be for the best all around. And I don't think you're the jerk for voicing your concern. And sure, you and your nanny are absolutely annoyed by the way your sister's acting. It's inappropriate and it's very abrasive for literally no reason. I mean, people eat food all the time. You can't really live without it. And I'm sure that your little sister would be singing a different tune if you flipped the script and started screaming at her anytime she ate in front of you. Maybe that way you can give her a taste of her own medicine and show her just how ridiculous she's being. So hopefully this works out. And just know that you're not the jerk in this situation. You're just trying to help out your sister and your family, not to mention your own sanity in this situation. I'm married to my wife, but I possibly have feelings for another girl that I currently manage at my job. And after several text messages late at night, as well as phone calls with this female coworker, I'm confused about how I feel, and I don't know what to do. So I married my wife 3.5 years ago, and we have a 1-year-old daughter together, and I truly love them both. My wife is attractive, and I get told from the other guys that I'm lucky to have her. Last year, I was at a work Christmas party, and a girl I work with was being very flirtatious, and I was probably flirting back too. Anyways, nothing happened. But the days following that, my head was all over the place. I honestly think I dipped into a bit of a depression, but going to the gym and keeping myself active stopped that getting any worse. I felt like I had feelings for the girl, and wasn't just the normal attraction to someone that you would normally feel. I had heart palpitations, and my heart was racing constantly when I thought of her. I also couldn't get her out of my head. As the weeks and months went on, those feelings thankfully died down, but never fully went away. I'm now that female coworker's line manager, and we do still have a lot of banter together, and we clearly get along just fine. I do still find her attractive, obviously, but I felt nowhere near how I felt last year. That is, until the work Christmas party came back around this year. I didn't really interact with her too much during the night, which I was surprised at myself, as I, along with everyone else, was pretty drunk. But we shared a few words and a few glances towards each other across the table, and then I received a message from her at 3 in the morning asking me where I was. I was still out in the club at this point, although I had separated from the group I was with, as they went to get some food. I messaged her back saying that we, meaning me and the others, had went back to our accommodation, and that was the end of the text interaction. Then in work the next day, she almost abruptly brings up that another colleague was alone, and that's why she was texting me at 3 in the morning. The thing is that I know that this other colleague went directly home from the club at about 2 in the morning. The girl also left the club at about 2:30 in the morning with some other people for food, which she slipped up and mentioned later on. And then after that, she went home. So I would say I'm about 80% sure that she was sending me a text message for more nefarious reasons, if you know what I mean. Either way, this has messed with my head again, and I can't stop thinking about this girl. I don't want to feel the way that I did last year, but also I'm worried that I have feelings for this girl. I genuinely don't know what to do, but I don't want to go through weeks feeling like rubbish simply because of this fairly minor interaction. All the cards are on the table. We've exchanged a few messages back and forth, initially work-related, but then a little bit of teasing, but she didn't respond to my last playful message. I don't want to have feelings for this girl, but I unfortunately feel like I may have some. Her look, her smile, etc., it just does something to me. People were speaking to me yesterday, and I couldn't even listen to what they were asking me because all I was doing was thinking about this. What should I do? This is absolutely inappropriate. So you're telling me that you're flirting with a younger coworker, all at the expense of your wife and your kid, and you're seriously trying to figure out what you should do? I don't know, maybe be loyal to your wife? This is so disrespectful to your wife and your relationship with her. By actively sending playful or teasing or flirting messages with this younger coworker, you're beginning to walk down a path where you're going to cheat on your wife. Like, this is how it starts. So if you want to keep your family, you need to stop. You need to stop all interactions with her, like right now. Tell her that you feel like you're crossing a professional boundary and you won't be replying to any messages or calls unless it has something to do with work. You seriously need to come back to reality and realize you're about to ruin everything in your life. Because here's the thing, you're married, you're not blind. It's human to find another person attractive in passing. You take note about it and then you carry on your day. But the fact that you're entertaining this woman and basically saying, ooh, what if I did send a flirty text message, is in no way, shape, or form going to be good for you and your current marriage. So honestly, get a hold of yourself. Also, for context, this guy is 31 years old and his female coworker is 24 years old. You are old enough to know better and to have some kind of head on your shoulders to protect your marriage and yourself from blowing up that marriage. So hopefully you're able to come to your senses sooner than later, because right now you're messing up big time. And if you're not careful, you're gonna lose your wife, your kid, and possibly even your job for trying to pursue this younger coworker. Today, I messed up by telling my younger daughter that she had a feral sister who lived in a cage in the attic. And I'm here to tell you that was a massive mistake. First off, I want to say that this happened a few years ago. My wife travels a lot, which means that when my daughter was about 6 or 7 years old, the two of us would have lots of nights together where we would play games or read before bedtime. One time, we were sitting on her bed before sleep, and about halfway through a book, when I closed it, I said to her, "We really love you, honey. I'm so happy it worked out with you. Not like the other one." She looked at me and said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, parenting is hard, and you don't get much practice. So sometimes you make mistakes. Take your sister, for instance. Before you, we had a young girl, and well, it just didn't work out. We were young, and we didn't know what we were doing, and it did not go well. My daughter just looks at me and asks, 'What happened to her?' I said, 'Well, we didn't really know what to do with her, so we just locked her in a cage in the attic and decided to start over. And we're lucky that we did, because that's how we got you.' I then opened up the book again and started reading, as if I hadn't just dropped a bombshell on her. Now, of course, my daughter had tons of questions, and I just made up all these facts about her supposed sister by the name of Maggie. I said that she can't speak English, and that she just kind of grunts and sings as a way of communicating. I also said that she is violent, and we have to slide food to her with a stick. And we've also become worried lately because of some of her drawings. You know, fun stuff like that. My daughter knows I'm full of garbage, so she doesn't believe it, but kind of wants to know the truth for sure. So we come up with lots of cool stories about her sister, who lives in the attic. Sometimes when we would read, I would stop and I would look at the ceiling and go, "Shush, did you hear that?" Probably nothing, before going back to the book. One time, she asked what she would do if she ever got out. Now, as a bit of context, the one thing I didn't tell you is that the door to the attic is in my daughter's room. So I told her, well, I said if she ever gets out, just lie still under your covers. She's not mad at you. She's mad at mommy and daddy. So a few weeks later, I'm working as a lunchroom monitor at her school. This is a volunteer thing that you do a few times a month, where you walk around the lunchroom and help little kids open their milk and stuff like that. My daughter is at a table with her friends and they call me over. One of the girls by the name of Colleen asked me straight up, "Molly says she has a sister who lives in a cage in the attic. Is this true?" Now this is where I messed up. What I should have said was, "No, that's just a made-up story." But what I did say is, "I don't know," while smiling and shrugging, indicating that maybe there is a kid being held in a cage in our attic. And at the time, I didn't think much about it. A few days later, I come in from walking the dog, and my wife tells me the principal wants me to call her. Oh no, I think I know what this is about. My wife is like, "Oh, she probably just wants to talk about the ice cream fundraiser." And I'm just thinking to myself, no, that is not what she's planning on talking to me about. So I call and she says something to the effect of, "Hi, first, thank you so much for the ice cream social. We appreciate your help. So one of our students' parents called and said that she is worried because," oh, this is so silly, I know, "that you are apparently keeping one of your kids in a cage in an attic. That's not true, right?" So now I have to go and explain in detail the whole story, which sounds like I'm a psychopath and the worst parent ever. She was very good about it and understanding, and we nervously laughed it off. The worst part of this was the girl who said something to her mom was a young girl whose mom had been to our house and someone we had driven different places. She knew us well and could have just called us instead of the principal, so that was pretty annoying. The outcome overall was a good one. We've since become very good friends with the principal as well as her husband. So overall, it all kind of worked out in the end. That is actually quite hilarious. It reminds me of that one Simpsons episode where Bart had an evil twin living in the attic and they would feed him fish heads every night or something along those lines. Really fun stuff all around. But this also proves that kids really will take what you say in as truth. So next time, maybe be a little bit more careful with the stories that you tell them. An entitled Karen freaks out on me when I get a picture with Santa, claiming that because I don't believe in Christmas, I'm apparently gonna burn in hell. And I've honestly never laughed harder in my life. Here's what happened. So first, some backstory. I'm 20 years old, I'm Jewish, and I work at a toy store at the local mall. So the get your photo with Santa thing is right in front of the toy store at the mall that I work at, which makes sense. Kids can look around while their parents wait in line, or the parents can look for present ideas while their kid waits in line. line, or they can wait as a family. There are a lot of options with it set up this way. So this incident happened at around 11 o'clock in the morning. I had been working at the toy store, and my boss lets me know I can go on break, so I end up doing just that. I had about 30 minutes, and I wasn't particularly hungry, but when I walked by the Santa exhibit, I saw that there was no lineup because it was a weekday in the middle of the day. Most kids are at school, and most of the parents are working. So, since I'm an adult and I don't celebrate Christmas, I thought a picture of me on Santa's lap would be a funny gift for my family on Hanukkah when I'm home. So I get in line. There's one family who currently has a kid seeing Santa, one kid in front of me, and not long after, our entitled mother, our entitled father, and their stupid children. They were all very lovely at first. We had a bit of a small talk while we waited. I asked their kids how excited they were to see Santa, as well as just some generic filler conversation questions. The family in front of me goes, and in hindsight, I think the gears were starting to turn in the mother's head that I wasn't just an older sibling, and I was actually there for myself. The family in front of me leaves. I get to tell Saint Nick exactly what I want for the holidays, even though I don't celebrate it, and I get my pictures. I go back to work and I clock back in, because even without the lineup, just waiting for two families and getting the pictures printed, as well as paid for, took most of my lunch break. And a few minutes later, the family from before comes in. The kids run off to go look at toys, and I give them a friendly hello again, but I am met with a very cold-hearted hello from the mother. Our store wasn't very busy either, given the time of day that it was, as well as the day in the week. So while they were browsing, I was showing my coworkers and the boss the pictures that I got, just for a laugh. And right when that happened, the mom stomps over as if I had just spit in her figgy pudding. She goes, "I'm sorry, I just think it's very rude and immature to keep my kids waiting longer just for a joke." I said to her, "Ma'am, there was no wait, at least not to see Santa." She then responded in a snarky way by saying, "You're too old to believe in this crap." Keep in mind, her kids were the only kids in the store, and at this point, she was yelling at the top of her lungs. I say to her, "Ma'am, I don't celebrate Christmas. I don't even believe in it." And I say this a little bit quieter because I'm capable of being at least courteous towards her kids. The entitled father then chimes in and says,
"Well, that's a whole other reason why you shouldn't have been there. You're ruining it for everyone else."
I look at both of them and I say, "Well, it doesn't really matter. Santa says I'm on the nice list, and his word is law." I was very obviously just messing with them the whole time, which is a weird coping mechanism that I've got, where I try to escape conflict just by being funny. The entitled mom then looks at me and says,
"Well, God says you're gonna burn in hell, so you can just forget it."
And at this point, I was blown away, but I had the perfect comeback. I said, "Well, I'm Jewish. We don't have a hell." And it was right about at that moment my boss chimed in and said, "All right, I'm gonna need you to leave if you're gonna keep harassing my employee." The kids came back to find their parents, and one asked them if they could have one of the candy canes we have at our checkout counter. The entitled mom, of course, said no, and I said they were free, so you could just go ahead and take it. Both kids took a candy cane because free candy totally outweighs their mother's words, which is kind of a scary thought without the context. The mom stares daggers at me, called me a name that was really not appropriate for children to hear, but I just smirked and I said to them, "Merry Christmas!" My boss and coworkers are still laughing about it with me as I write this, and hopefully those two parents cheer up and find that joyful Christmas spirit. So this really is a funny story in my opinion. The fact that two parents actually would legitimately get upset because an adult is choosing to get a picture with Santa is really weird. This is honestly the first time I've ever seen anybody gatekeep Santa. I'm pretty sure he's the most accessible person on the planet, regardless of what religion you're a part of. But hey, apparently these two entitled parents definitely think otherwise. Hopefully they're able to find a better attitude towards Christmas, because before they know it, they're gonna ruin it for their kids, if you know what I mean. And I also like the fact that you can definitely tell these people are super entitled, because they know how to fake it when they're in line, but the second they see something that they just don't like, they're gonna run up to you and say, "Oh, you're gonna burn in hell." I mean, that's not very St. Nicholas of you, if you ask me. So hopefully the original poster never has to deal with that again, because I honestly think there's nothing wrong with getting a picture with Santa, regardless of your age. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for rejecting my ex-girlfriend after she came back to me after cheating on me, begging me for some kind of money? So to start things off, I'll go through a little bit of background with me and my ex-girlfriend. We met 3 years ago on a bus. She seemed nice and we talked for a while, and I ended up getting her number. We eventually started dating, and after about a year, she started to let slip her mask. She started yelling at me for little mistakes, like for example, forgetting the dishes or taking out the trash. And I will admit, sometimes it was my fault. I got caught up on something else or something along those lines. But eventually, it was everything I did. If I bought her a present, she would say, "Oh, you should have used that money for something else, not me. Stop being so irresponsible." But if I didn't buy her a present, she would say, "I can't believe you never get me anything. It's like you don't even love me." So it was a constant back and forth. Eventually, I went to surprise her at her apartment. I opened the door with my spare key because I wasn't planning on staying, as I was just dropping off a gift basket. I eventually then hear her and another guy going at it, if you know what I mean. At this point, I saw red, and I threw the door open and I started to yell at her. I asked how long this had been going on, and the guy responded, around a month. Sorry bro, she said she was single. And he walks into the bathroom to get dressed. She then starts wailing out excuses, and I honestly don't want to hear it. So I slam the door, I grab the gift basket, and I just drive home. When I get home, I cry my eyes out. My neighbor must have heard it because they knocked on my door just to see if I was okay. My neighbor is a good friend of mine, and she comforts me and calms me down. Eventually, a few months later, my neighbor and I, we'll call her Sarah, that's not her real name, start dating, and things are great. She is amazing and is always good to me, and I honestly adore her so much. Fast forward to today, and my ex knocks on my door, crying and asking to come in. I tell her no, and I try to close the door, but she actually stops me and asks me if we can get back together. I of course said no, and I tell her to just go away, but she says, "Well, at least give me some money because I deserve it." I ask her why on earth I would ever need to give her money. She responds by saying, "Because my boyfriend left me and I just got fired for too many late days." I asked her why she was late, and she explains that it's because she slept in after having many fun nights before. I tell her to go away because I honestly don't want to hear it, but she yells at me and cusses me out. My girlfriend says I did the right thing, but I'm worried if she actually did need some money and that I just yelled at somebody in need. I hate conflict, and I try to help everyone I can as much as I can because I don't want people to suffer. But my ex was also a bad girlfriend and incredibly toxic. So it begs the question, am I the jerk for rejecting my ex and telling her to go away? I do not think you're the jerk in this situation. Legitimately, I think you really should listen to your girlfriend at this moment and believe what she says, that you did the right thing. People like your ex-girlfriend will always be looking for handouts. They'll cheat on you, they'll treat you like garbage, they'll yell at you about everything under the sun, but the second they can get any kind of cash or some kind of advantage out of you, you better believe that they will come back crawling and crying. They'll do whatever it takes to get that money in their hand. And honestly, you do not need that in your life, because it sounds like you have an awesome girlfriend right now who loves you exactly the way you are and would never treat you like that. So personally, I would just cut that ex out of your life. Tell her to take a hike and never come back, because it sounds like you have a better girlfriend in your life. And honestly, I would just hold fast to that and ignore your crazy, needy ex. I regret telling my coworker that I'm interested in him, and now I feel angry, broken, and very confused, and I don't know what to do. So a couple of weeks ago, I told a guy at my job that I was interested in him. He didn't reply in a negative or positive manner. He just said that he finds me attractive, and later, he added that he thinks I'm courageous for saying something like this. And before even saying all that, he admitted that he's been single for many years because of many heartbreaks, as well as some trust issues, and also that he's not really in the right place at the moment to have a relationship. The reason I decided to tell him I was interested is because he showed me so much signs of interest. He was flirting a lot with me, complimenting me intensely, saying he thinks I'm a beautiful woman, asking me indirectly if I'm single and stuff like that. I mean, all signs basically pointed to him constantly flirting with me, from the deep eye contact to him being very curious about me, as well as asking questions about my personal life. I mean, one day I even told him that there was something I wanted to tell him, but I didn't even know how to say it. And he replied by saying, "Whenever you're ready, just let me know." And then he actually winked at me. And before leaving for the day, he asked me, "Don't forget to tell me what you wanted to say, okay?" And then winks again. I ended up just telling him I find him handsome, but it was like he was expecting me to say something else. I mean, the list honestly goes on. And what really upsets me the most is that when I asked him why he was flirting with me so much, after I admitted I was interested in him, he told me that he flirts with everyone. But I see how he treats other people. Yes, he is nice, and yes, he flirts and compliments people, but it's never as intense as the way I I experience it. After that day, when I told him I was interested in him, he was still overly nice and flirty, and he was still touching me, mostly on my lower back and my arms. He was still talking a lot. He even mentioned while we were alone, "So, you like older men, huh?" He winks at me again and he has a huge smile, which is very confusing. However, I did feel a bit awkward after I felt rejected. I'm still nice towards him and I talk to him. I smile as much as I can and I try to be polite, but I am less and less present, and I do talk less and less to him. I noticed also that he's kind of weird. A few days ago, he startled me after I opened the door, and he asked me, "Oh, I hope you don't think I'm ugly." Just kidding. But really, you were just in your bubble, right? Even today, he ate at the same time as me again, and decided to sit closer to me as usual. I engaged in a little bit of conversation with him, and we talked for a little bit, but he was silent the rest of the time, and usually he talks a lot. At some point, we were alone, but I felt like he really wanted to say something. He was silent and he just kind of seemed off. He just ended up asking me why I'm not eating and that I should eat more. So it begs the question, am I making him feel uncomfortable? I'm just really confused by his behavior and I honestly don't know what to do. First off, I always think it's a bad idea to try and ask somebody out that you work with. That is definitely not going to go well most of the time, and if anything, it's going to cause weird situations like this. But on the other hand, this guy is definitely leading you on in my opinion. He's using the fact that you said, "Oh, you're really attractive," and decided to just kind of lean into it as some kind of joke. And that's not fair for you or your feelings. And if anything, you already have your answer about how he's going to treat you. And you know for a fact that it will never be more than just some kind of work friendship. But with the way he's acting, I very seriously don't think it's going to even be that far anymore. Also, this guy's winking at you after he says stuff. Sorry, but that's just a little creepy. That'd be acceptable if you're in a relationship. But for a colleague that you just turned down, no, that's really weird. So do yourself a favor and look for somebody else, because this guy's not interested, and if anything, it sounds like he's just trying to string you along, which honestly is completely unfair to you. Today, I messed up by realizing that my husband and I have been miscommunicating for years, and it's honestly pretty funny. So today, I was talking at lunch with my husband, and we went over the same subject we have unsuccessfully talked about for years. Please also note that we have known each other for almost 10 years, and we've lived together for 5, and we've been married for almost 3. So we were talking about dogs and cats, and he said that cats are pretty good. Now, pay attention to that wording, because that's the bit where we messed up. Over the years, I had been disheartened when he said things were pretty good. From my perspective, he seemed to be emotionally distant and unenthusiastic about things. Everything was just pretty good, and he said it in a very mild tone of voice. So over the years, we tried to talk about it with limited success. Today, when I asked him why he never seemed to show much enthusiasm for things, he was confused as always. He said that he did show enthusiasm because he likes cats, but I explained that he just said that they were only pretty good, and this confused him even more. But somehow, I managed upon the magic combination of words to get him to further elaborate. Usually, he would just repeat that things were pretty good, but today he managed to lay out his scale, and this is how it goes. It starts out as okay, and then it goes to good, then there's pretty good, and at the top of that list is the word great. Now, I have never seen pretty good used in that place in the scale. I always place it below good, as in almost good or mostly good. For years, we had been talking about things, and I was just always under the assumption that he just wasn't really interested in whatever it was. I had to run damage control at Thanksgiving dinner one time because he said my mom's cooking was pretty good. We have stopped watching TV shows because I thought he was only mildly enjoying them and didn't want to be too much of a bother. I eventually just came to the conclusion that he simply wasn't very expressive and tried to place his responses on my scale because he had such difficulty explaining it. And mind you, this has been going on for years. I also got disheartened when he said my dog was pretty good. He calls me pretty cool. When I told him about my scale, he was shocked. He says it must be a southern thing, though I don't really remember it when I lived in Texas. We compromised and said that it must be an Arkansas thing, which is his home state. We both began re-examining our interactions over the years. The Thanksgiving dinner, me explaining to my brother that no, my husband really did like that movie. He just expresses it in that way, especially how he talks about my dog, pretty much all of it. When lunch was over, I assured him everything was okay, and he said I was pretty cool and got this horrified look on his face. He realized that from my perspective, he had been calling me mostly good for years. years. I similarly realized I had been assuming he wasn't enthusiastic about things because of that wording. It was so embarrassing. I have since encouraged him to be more open about his feelings and his happiness, as well as just confusing him for years. I'm just so baffled by everything. It's good we're learning to communicate, but man, he feels really apologetic now, and I've tried to assure him that it's honestly okay. We're trying to find better ways to communicate, but you know what? It's kind of a process. He has also encouraged me to ask him what he really means when he says things, and this will hopefully be a good way of getting him to rephrase some of the things that he says. Hopefully we can cut down on miscommunications like this in the future. This is really a funny story. You think your partner feels one way and then they turn around and say, no, I actually really enjoy this. And also, if this is scaled from 1 to 4, this person's partner has scaled their relationship at a 3 out of 4, which is really good. Hopefully this works out for them, and hopefully they're able to communicate better, because I can honestly only assume what it's like to go literally years under the assumption that your partner really isn't that interested in just about anything. But in contrast, it must be relieving knowing that your partner is way more into you as well as the people around you than you previously realized. My sister is jealous of my friendship with her boyfriend, and now she thinks I'm trying to steal her boyfriend away from her, and I honestly don't know what to do. Okay, so my sister is dating her boyfriend for about 3 years. He's a good guy and I'm happy for them. She's a bit insecure about how she looks, but I don't know why, as she is so gorgeous, but she just doesn't see it. Her boyfriend loves her so much and is completely loyal to just her. I also get along really well with her boyfriend. We don't hang out or text on a daily basis, but we talk sometimes, and he's been texting me more often because of her Christmas present. We do those huge get-togethers at Christmas where all of our family, partners, and family friends are invited to my parents' house, and we just eat, drink, and play games all night long. And we have a group chat for planning purposes. My sister and her boyfriend are also in there, as well as other family members, friends of my parents, neighbors, and relatives. We all live pretty close by. I recently moved in with my best friend and got a new bed a few days ago. I couldn't get it upstairs on my own, mostly because there were some big boxes and it was far too heavy, so I texted in the group if anyone is close by to help me out. My sister's boyfriend, we'll call him Jake, that's not his real name, told me that he is in my area and will come over. He did, and he helped me to get it set up. It took maybe an hour in total, so I offered that he can have dinner with me as a thank you. I made a pizza, we ate and talked about the upcoming Christmas, and honestly nothing happened. We just talked as friends. He then left an hour later. Not soon after, my sister called me to accuse me of being into her boyfriend. She told me that I have enough guy friends, as well as guys that are into me, that could have helped me get stuff set up, but I just had to choose her boyfriend. Now, I have told her several times that I am simply not interested in Jake. I told her that there's nothing to worry about, but she didn't believe me and she just cussed me out. She then told me that I'm not allowed to come to the get-together. I talked to my parents and they are on my side and say that she is just overreacting. Now my sister says that she and Jake aren't coming if I come along. I tried to talk to her, as well as Jake too, but she's still super upset and blocked me on all social media, and I don't know what I did wrong. Maybe I shouldn't have invited him to stay, but he did me a favor, so I wanted to show my appreciation for his work, his time, and effort to help me out. And I honest to God would have done the same thing for anyone else who came along to help me with this. We just had dinner. I didn't invite him for anything else, if you know what I mean. She is apparently also mad at Jake, but not as much as she's mad at me. He just texted me stating that she thinks I'm into him and tried to steal him from her, but I'd never do that to her ever. She's my little sister and I would never hurt her. I'm at a loss at the moment because I want to resolve this issue before Christmas. I don't want us to make a fool out of ourselves for fighting over something so stupid right before the holidays. What should I do? The way your sister is acting is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, that has to be some serious insecurity for her to start acting like that. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. You literally just had dinner with her boyfriend, and that was just as a thank you for him coming out to help out. There are a few options here, but I think if anything, just explain to her that, hey, maybe I'm just trying to have a brother-in-law type relationship with him and nothing more. It's really unfortunate that your sibling feels this way, so maybe even also talking to the boyfriend and saying, hey, can you try and reel this in and explain to her that you are not interested in me? That might be a good way of trying to get through to her and explain to her that no, nothing is going on. Nothing happened and there's literally nothing something to worry about. So hopefully that conversation goes well. Because you're right, it is literally right before Christmas, and it really would be stupid to argue over something so small this close to the holidays. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We love and appreciate you so much, and we will see you in the next video. Take care. Don't forget to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, trust me, we know and we're sad. We literally sit here and we cry, and we're thinking to ourselves, man, they haven't subscribed yet. What are they doing? Please just subscribe already. You don't want to miss out on videos, dude. Daily videos. Like, what are you doing, man? But who am I kidding? I know for a fact if you listen this far into the video, you're probably subscribed. But just in case you haven't, please subscribe today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.